Somewhere beyond the recesses of time and space, two podcasters are set adrift in a machine, picking up transmissions of movies that are forgotten but not gone.
Welcome to Movie Memory Machine, the only podcast about forgotten movies that pop Xanax like they're Skittles. I'm your host, Landen Solano, joined always by my co-host, Truman Caps. Truman, it's good to see you.
Landon, it's good to be seen as the confident captain of this podcast.
Excuse me, did I call you captain?
I'm not saying that you're seeing me as that. I'm just basically reflecting out loud that it's good that I can see myself as that.
Oh, okay. I think the delusion you're under of being captive under a ship that is captaining itself is, I don't know, commendable.
It's kind of a self-actualization technique that I learned from a feature in Dazzle magazine. I'm sure that it's that it was all based in real science and not just something that Allison and Janney made up.
Perfect. I have a question for you.
Ask me. Is it in the form of a quiz like one might find in Dazzle magazine?
Rank these.
Yes.
No. Do you have a favorite jungle adventure?
You know,
I am taking The Legend of Tarzan off the plate.
Because you knew that I was going to mention it. I only like jungle adventures where a man yells shit and cliff dives. I gotta say, I mean, call me trite for saying this, call me cliche or basic. Romancing the Stone. Like, you can't beat the king. It's just, it is what this movie wants to be, I think.
All right, here's the thing. I watched this movie, 6 Days and 7 Nights, comes out in 1998. We'll get into that in a second.
To be clear, 6 Days, 7 Nights, not 6 days and 7 nights. People might confuse it with 40 days and 40 nights.
6 days, comma, 7 nights.
There you go. Thank you.
There is a comma in there.
Love punctuation in our titles.
Okay, since this came out in 1998, I decided to use our time machine and go 20 years in the future and 20 years in the past. I went and watched Romancing the Stone, and I went and watched The Lost City.
I thought to myself, I should do that, and then I was worried that doing that would completely crowd out any thoughts I had about 6 Days, 7 Nights. So I'm excited to hear yours.
I returned back to 6 Days, 7 Nights after my own little jungle adventure.
You went back to the island, just like Lost.
Here's the thing. Okay, I want you to take Romancing the Stone, and like those bro-y marketing seminars, I want you to sell me Romancing the Stone like you're selling me the pen.
Okay. Romancing the Stone.
Yes.
What if a third-wave feminism New York City career gal yuppie at kind of a crossroads in her life winds up dropped into an adventure-type scenario where the person she has to depend on to survive is a gruff, manly man, but their conflicting personalities eventually wear the other one down, and they find commonality in that. So basically, it's what if men are from Mars, women are from Venus, went to the jungle? Buy my pen.
Okay, I would have bought that pitch had I not just watched Romancing the Stone.
But you told me to sell you Romancing the Stone. I sold you Romancing the Stone. Yeah.
You sold a past version of myself, Romancing the Stone. Having tested out the product for myself,
yeah,
I would like a refund.
Are you trying to shit talk Romancing the Stone right now?
I am. Yes, I am. I'm shit talking Romancing the Stone, not conceptually, not Kathleen Turner at all.
Sure.
Not even Danny DeVito.
No one would ever.
Michael Douglas is the whiniest motherfucker on the face of the planet. He has no. What the fuck does he have to complain about?
Is he whinier than David Schwimmer in this film?
No. But
I'm already poking holes in your argument.
David Schwimmer isn't the one saving Anne Heche in this movie.
There is no possible reading on the movie where that's the case. Okay, so you are taking a shot at the undisputed king of the jungle adventure romance film universe, but on the basis that Michael Douglas is not a very compelling hero.
That is correct.
So you're saying that
I do not find him charismatic. I find him just to be kind of like, I don't know. Like, there's something to, and I want to go deeper into this when we start talking about Harrison Ford. There's something about that sort of blue-collar archetype, the John Waynes, the Harrison Fords, that, like, I can understand, like, the being put out by a city person, like, bothers their DNA.
Yeah.
When I see Michael Douglas, I'm like, you're just a city person dressing up like you're for the jungle, and you don't have a leg to stand on to complain about anything.
Yeah, okay. So you look at Michael Douglas wearing a half unbuttoned, canvas shirt or whatever, and you're like, you're not a jungle dude. Much in the same way that one could look at George W. Bush wearing a cowboy hat, and it's like, motherfucker, you're from Connecticut or some shit.
I love that all roads lead back to politics with you.
It's probably a bad move for this podcast about jungle adventures that I talk about, other people who had foreign adventures. Okay, so he's a phony. You don't get authenticity off of him. But does that pull down? Does that pull down everything else that works about the movie?
Yes, because it hinges so much on the chemistry between the two. I mean, it's not just a jungle adventure; it's a jungle romance. And I have to admit, I had much more fun watching The Lost City than I did Romancing the Stone.
Yeah,
I would even say I had much more fun watching this movie than Romancing the Stone.
Okay, them's fighting words, and I could probably fight better had I also watched Romancing the Stone more recently and could actually speak in more detail. I think that, and listen, I've wanted to see The Lost City. Again, I should have done it for this, because I feel like with Channing Tatum in a male lead, you're in very good hands. I don't think I've not liked him in a single film, and I saw Kingsman 2, which is really one of my all-time least favorite films. I think that Channing Tatum is just a natural choice. Remake this movie with Channing Tatum, I'd watch it, and it would be better than this.
Well, and so this is going to play, I guess, unfortunately, there's no way around this film. Today's discussion is going to delve deep into gender politics yet again.
Well, yeah, but I mean, hopefully not as deep as we've had to dive in the past. Like, it's not...
True.
Yeah.
But this is, an artifact of the 90s where it's very much like, oh my God, can men and women get along?
No, I am not laughing because I disagree. I'm just laughing because you're right. That was really a whole genre of movies. It's like men and women. What's going on with these two?
There's even entire sitcoms based around the premise.
Yes, I feel like I've seen so many takes on this that made me more upset. Like, this one, I think, really manages to really not be that horrible in terms of its take on the battle of the sexes.
Sure, yes. But I'm saying it's unignorable. I'm not taking this movie to task for it, necessarily. Some of the depictions, maybe. But my point being, like, when you have these jungle adventure romance stories, you can't take gender out of it. And what I like about The Lost City and Channing Tatum in that is that it does it they're like, both of them are out to sea. Like, Sandra Bullock is a city girl author, who has knowledge, because she writes these historical romance novels set in, exotic locations, and he's, a cover model, and of course, but he has a heart of gold. He wants to do good, and like his intentions are always good, but he's a dummy, and like the roles are switched a little bit. They're relying on each other rather than the woman relying on the man to get them out of the situation.
They're both fish out of water but like one of them they both bring different kind of skill sets and knowledge to it, although neither one of them is necessarily a jungle person.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole Brad Pitt of it, but we're not talking about The Lost City today.
No, we're not.
Talking about 6 days and 7 nights.
No,
I
6
said
days,
and again.
comma, 7 nights.
Fuck this title.
Hardworking commas are getting cast aside in favor of and I will not stand for it.
Listen, I have an apology to make. I am a lifelong proponent of the Oxford comma, and I'm not representing very well today.
I am a lifelong opponent of people having opinions about the Oxford comma. I will do whatever my editor tells me to do. Someone please hire me.
Well, okay, we've talked about it enough. Today the machine has made us watch 6 days, 7 nights from 1998. Truman, unfry our communication system so that you can SOS, and that means say our synopsis.
Overworked fashion magazine editor Robin Monroe, played by Heche, gets whisked away on a vacation to the tropical island of Makatea by her doting boyfriend Frank, played by David Schwimmer. On their first day at the resort, Frank proposes to Robin, but their romantic getaway is interrupted when her boss Marjorie, played by Allison Janney, calls and begs her to fly to a nearby island to supervise a last-minute photo shoot. Robin hires grizzled, grumpy cargo pilot Quinn Harris, played by Harrison Ford, to fly her to the shoot. Robin and Quinn can't stand each other, but when a freak storm forces them to crash land on an uninhabited desert island, they have to depend on one another to survive. As Robin and Quinn contend with wild animals, rough terrain, and a band of hostile pirates, their nonstop bickering begins to turn into a passionate island romance.
Pirates!
Pirates! A little bit. Trace amounts of pirates.
A taste of pirate.
It's a LaCroix pirate flavor, you know?
This movie was written by Michael Browning, who has one other credit. Maybe we'll get into that.
Oh, boy.
Directed by legend Ivan Reitman.
What?
And starring Harrison Ford, Anne Heche, David Schwimmer, Jacqueline, Obradors. Truman.
Landen.
This movie.
Yeah.
Was released on June 12th, 1998.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if I was supposed to be jumping in there or knowing when it was released. I also don't know why you had to say my name just to tell me more facts about the movie. Like, I was clearly listening.
Were you? I don't know.
I was pulling it up on Wikipedia. You got me.
It was released by Walt Disney. Do you want to guess how many theaters it was released into?
I mean, I'm going to try and aim high this time and say 2,900.
Okay. You're in the ballpark-ish. You're standing right outside the ballpark.
Well, then by definition, I'm not in the ballpark. If I'm outside the ballpark, yes. I'm not in it.
That's correct. This is not a sports podcast.
Oh, that is true.
And also, apparently not a good metaphor podcast.
Yeah, that's really, the metaphor podcasts are really burning up the iTunes charts right now. I don't know, 3,000.
2,550.
Wow, okay, so not a math podcast either. Less than I would have thought, especially given the fact that this movie was kind of successful.
Yeah, but I think, I think it's once you get into, 2000, after 2005, maybe after 2008, that's when you start to see 3,000 theaters. Mm-hmm. I really don't think many movies were released that wide in the 90s. This is about as wide as they come.
Okay, well, if then this is wide, then wide it truly is. It's as wide as some of the vistas that we see in this movie. What did it open at?
Oh, it debuted at number 2.
2? Okay. All right, number 2. I think
number 2.
Harrison Ford gets butts in seats unless you're about to tell me something that disproves that and it was actually due to some other reason.
No, that is exactly the situation here. And I'm going to need you to brace yourself.
Okay.
Are you sitting down?
Yes, you can see me. I'm right here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Can you double sit down?
Yes, I'm going to lie down on the floor.
Okay, good.
All right. I'm in a fetal position, and that even has nothing to do with what you're about to tell me.
I'm going to go through the top 5 box office in reverse this time.
Oh, building some suspense.
And I just need you to prepare.
Okay.
I mean, I'm doing it in reverse order so that you have enough time.
I mean, I am already, again, lying on the floor in a fetal position.
Yes.
I don't know how much more prepared I could be.
Get back in the embryonic sac.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. I'll get my therapist on speed dial so we can, conference in on this and support me.
Okay. Number 5, in its 4th week in the theaters, Roland Emmerich's Godzilla.
Oh, man. Okay. I mainly remember the Taco Bell tie-in for that. The Chihuahuas going around, trying to bait the lizard with a gordita or something.
I think that was the first movie I rented and didn't watch.
Oh, man. I don't know that I even remember a movie that I definitely did that. There were definitely movies A Simple Plan. I rented and did not watch A Simple Plan. A shame.
Good movie.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. When I rented it and actually did watch it many years later, I was happy to have done so.
Number 4, our usual spot, is a movie that is not forgotten.
Yeah.
And it's first week, so it debuts at number 4. So I maybe we're only looking at forgotten films that debut at number 4. Maybe there are an equal amount of remembered movies that debut at number 4. We have to look at the inverse numbers. I don't want to make any incorrect assessments on the data we have.
Yeah, we should do a podcast where we just talk about popular movies that everybody likes and remembers. I think that would be great.
Coming in number 4 in its first week, Can't Hardly Wait.
Mm-hmm.
A movie very important to my generation.
Yeah, a movie that frankly I have not seen, and it's about teens, right? It's about youths.
It's about the party that happens right after graduation.
Oh man, a party I did not get invited to. Not relatable. Okay.
Coming in at number 3 in its third week, A Perfect Murder.
A Perfect Murder. For some reason, I immediately thought that was A Simple Plan, just because I mentioned it a second ago.
My brain is telling me it's a Sandra Bullock movie.
God! What?
You know who it is?
Who is it?
It's not Sandra Bullock from The Lost City. It's Michael Douglas from Romancing the Stone.
Okay. So there's something. This week we have fallen into a pocket of time and space that is deeply tied to either Michael Douglas or
Sandra Bullock
or The Jungle, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2, today's movie that we're covering. And then number 1 in the box office for its second week in a row.
Mm-hmm.
The Truman Show. That was the sound of the embiotic sac slipping back over Truman.
Oh, God, I actually should have called my therapist. I'm flashing back to a lot of thoughts about being in 4th grade at that point in time. Fun, cool, great, awesome. I guess I'm surprised that The Truman Show did better than this movie at opening.
In its second week.
In its second week, because it's kind of a thinky, conceptual, comedy-ish sci-fi movie, and this as marketed, is a straight-up adventure with Harrison Ford in it.
Well, that's the interesting thing is, like, one, you can compare star power here, right?
Sure.
You got Jim Carrey versus Harrison Ford.
I guess he was.
2,
that was his decade, wasn't it?
Your description of the movie is what we now know of it, but at the time, it was very much people only know of The Truman Show through its marketing, not through the years of reassessment. So I think you have to look at what people thought they were getting themselves into with, the trailer of that. I don't remember the trailer of The Truman Show outside of him, kind of doing that like bendy wave to his neighbors and drawing on the mirror in Soap, the space helmet.
I seem to remember a shot of him gardening that is really just ass forward. Like, you are almost, you don't see Jim's Carrey's, but his ass is filling like 40% of the frame as he looks over his shoulder to say hey to. That actually might be him doing the weird arm wave to the neighbors. Never mind.
Other questions then come up, but I'm not going to probe them on the show.
Don't say probe. Okay, so this movie though, it didn't even it couldn't crack Jim Carrey's magic. I shouldn't say crack either.
But catch this. It stayed in theaters for 19 weeks.
Okay.
6 of those were the top 10.
Wow.
So it kicked around the top 10 for a while. It went from number 2 to number 4, 6, 7, 9, and 10.
I can't say I'm necessarily surprised. This makes sense everything about this movie makes sense. Is the kind of movie that
Yes.
you are bored, you don't know what to see. Oh, this is still in theaters. Yeah, let's give that a shot. It makes way more sense to see this after it's been out for a month and a half than it does to see it on the opening weekend, honestly.
Well, okay. Talking about its success, it was a $80 million budget.
Mm-hmm.
Domestically, it earns just upwards of $74 million.
Yep.
Internationally, just upwards of $90 million for a total of $64.8 million.
How much of that was from Tahiti, do you think? How many Tahitians saying, like, we know they didn't shoot it here, but this movie is all about us. We got to go support Tahitian cinema.
Is it about them? They go to an island that literally has no one on it.
Yes, a beautiful, pristine island with fresh water and abundant wildlife that, for some reason, no one has decided to live on.
I pulled some additional information, Truman.
You pulled it?
I pulled it
You
out of the internet ether.
Okay. What is this additional information?
Marketing budgets.
Oh, you've cracked the code?
There's no it's not reported money, so you can't tell what someone spent on a particular movie. But what I do have is an estimate.
Okay.
Broken down into 3 brackets.
Oh man, multiple brackets, estimates, folks. You are listening to Podcast Gold right now.
Okay, well, I just thought that this might help us understand whether a movie turns a profit for a studio or doesn't. And I would imagine there's the cultural, like, we embrace this movie as canon and we want to continue to watch it. You know, it's classic to some degree, right?
Yeah.
But then there's the studio side that says this movie did not turn a profit for us at all. Therefore, we're going to throw even less resources into marketing it on home video or any future releases, right?
Sure.
So I think it's going to be important for us to know if a movie actually turned a profit, even if it looks like it did.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very useful metric, and one that we definitely don't have access to with more recent films, because that stuff is in a streaming service black hole.
Well, yes. Yeah. We don't talk about the streaming dimension. It's a black hole that we refuse to get sucked into.
Yes, when I said it was a black hole, I meant a literal black hole. Go on. How much did it cost to market this movie?
Okay, well, I don't know how much it costs to market this movie, but here's what I got. I got here's the 3 brackets: blockbusters, mid-budget films, and low-budget / independent films.
Yeah.
So, for blockbuster films, the marketing budget is often equal or just exceeding the actual production budget. So, that's the $100 million to $200 million range.
Okay.
So,
we're not
if there
in
is
that
a
range.
$100 million movie, you can expect they're spending $100 million on marketing.
Woof.
Yeah. So, just taking that, $80 million... $80 million falls between these two, actually.
Yeah.
Let me go on to the next one, and then I'll return to that thought. Mid-budget films are about $30 to $50 million.
Okay.
And the marketing for those can cost anywhere from $15 to $50 million.
Okay.
So that's like either half the budget or equal the budget.
Yeah.
So blockbusters, equal or double. Mid-range, it's equal or half.
Yeah.
And then for smaller films, it's usually like $1 to $10 million, depending on the film, the production company, distribution company, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So $80 million kind of falls between the blockbusters and mid-budget films. For 1998, though, that is a big budget.
Based off of that, it seems fair to assume that they spent at least $80 million marketing this, right?
Roughly, yeah. I would say 60 to 80 million would be my guess. So when you start to factor that in and you see this $164 million budget, suddenly that's a $4 million profit.
Yeah. It suddenly doesn't look like as much of a winner as it did without the marketing numbers in it.
And, I guess I have to go back on, things I said earlier in the season when I'm like, there's barely a movie that doesn't turn a profit. which, like, it's still $4 million, and that's not factoring in, TV rights and airplane rights and all that other stuff that don't go into the box office.
And also, let's keep in mind that on paper, Forrest Gump and Men in Black never turned a profit, but that's mainly an accounting trick so the studios don't have to pay a lot of the people who worked on it more money.
Exactly.
So I think basically it's that none of the numbers we throw out about box office receipts and profit and what's successful, there is so much other bullshit about how much a movie actually costs, but whether it actually makes anybody money or not. So the last 10 minutes of this podcast, and indeed this 10 minutes of every podcast we've done, doesn't really mean anything, folks.
But it's interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting to talk about numbers for a minute.
Truman, where was 6 Days, 7 Nights on your radar in 1998?
Some of those $80 million worth of marketing did hit me in the form of trailers that I saw on TV as a wee lad, or that I saw, clips from it in the, Universal Studios montage at the beginning of another movie on DVD. Like, you put in The Mummy, a great movie, and you get the montage of 6 different movies with the Universal logo, and I always feel like I was seeing Anne Heche and Harrison Ford in the plane screaming as it takes off, and or it's like in the ads they would run for DVD when it first started, it was action is more intense, and it's the beach exploding and them getting in the plane. Anyway, my biggest memory of 6 Days, 7 Nights, one of my close friends when I was a boy was, he lived up the street from me. His family was pretty Christian, and him telling me about 6 Days, 7 Nights, and specifically about the pirates at the end where they're shooting at the plane with their howitzer, and then the plane takes off and they shoot straight up at the plane, and the howitzer shell falls back down and blows up the boat. He basically
Podcast over, everyone.
He ruined the movie for me 30 years before I could watch it, so now I ruined it for you. But so he told me about that, and I went through the rest of my life thinking 6 Days, 7 Nights, kind of cool action movie, shooty, back and forth conflict kind of movie. Now having watched it and realizing, this movie is a lot hornier than I kind of expected it to be, I'm mainly thinking of my very Christian friend and his very Christian family watching, a lady taking her top off and David Schwimmer's brain melting, or Harrison Ford telling Anne Heche that, quote, your tits are too small. I now just have a new perspective on what may have been an awkward moment in my friend's life. Where was this for you?
Well, I just want to clarify. You had not seen it until now.
I had not seen it until now. This only existed for me as a movie about a bunch of pirates shooting a shell up in the air that blows them up. What about you, though?
Saw this in the theater.
Woo! Opening weekend, or a month and a half later?
That I can't remember. I would have seen this with my parents, I think.
Awkward.
I've seen worse stuff with them.
Also, okay, true. Same for me.
Yeah, I can't really... It's weird. It lingered in my memory. I remember enjoying it back in the day. I can't remember if I owned this one. I don't think I did, but there is a 15% chance I did.
This does not feel like a movie you'd see at an Airbnb, even on their DVD shelf. I don't feel like
true.
This is not a movie that I feel like a lot of people owned.
If I owned it, there was one very specific circumstance in which it happened, which was Blockbuster Video, when they were getting rid of their surplus, would put used DVDs for sale at the front. You could just kind of flip through them for $5.99, $10.99, or $9.99, something like that.
We used to have a proper country. We used to live in a civilized society.
But it was also 2 for $3 or 3 for $5, something like that. And I would...
this is what they took from you.
3 for $2. Yeah, I had that backwards. Anyway, so I would just load up on a bunch of movies I hadn't seen because it was as cheap as getting those movies, for rental. And then I owned them, and that's how I owned a lot of weird movies that I didn't think I would own.
I feel like that was just sort of a golden era for as either video stores were getting rid of their excess stock, or as video stores were sadly going out of business years later and selling off their stock. I just think that's the reason why I once lived in a house full of dudes who had like 2 or 3 copies of the movie 21 in their DVD collection. Who sees 21 and is like, I have to own 21. I have to be able to watch
A very specific kind of guy.
I want to watch the Kevin Spacey Blackjack movie anytime. I want that power.
But okay, I got one more part of my reflection here.
Yeah, how much? Yeah, I want to know how much of this stuck with you. Also,
actually, I don't know. I'd say a good portion of it did. A lot of it did not. Just because it's not rooted to anything.
Sure.
That part of it did not stick with me, but the big stuff did. I want to talk real quick though, as far as my reflections about Anne Heche. Let's start talking about Anne Heche here. Because it's going to, I think, come up over and over again throughout this episode.
Yeah, make Heche while the sun shines.
I had a little bit of a crush on her.
I don't blame you. She's
I
very pretty.
think, and have always thought she's a fantastic actress.
Oh, this is true.
So 1998 was really big for her and big for me experiencing her because the same year she was also in the Psycho remake.
Oh, of course. Yes.
So for that reason, I think I remembered, and I loved Harrison Ford too. Obviously, I was a big Indiana Jones kid growing up, and
who wasn't?
Yeah, I was just kind of custom made for this kind of adventure film that's not too violent and not too like. That's the thing with me during the 90s before I like got my sea legs with gore and horror and scary stuff. Like if it was too much, like it turned me off from the movie entirely.
Sure.
This movie has zero violence.
Yeah, well, it has like 1% violence.
I can handle
violence.
1% violence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's soy violence.
I can handle shrapnel violence.
Yeah. It's not even a man is fully shot, Landon. You watch a man die. The pirates shoot a guy and there's a puff of blood.
I bet I blocked that out of my brain as a kid, and now talking about it, it remained blocked in my head.
Your mother covered your eyes. Don't look. Stay pure. Pirates don't kill people.
Anyway, yeah. So I kind of I'll go through the things I remember as we go through this film, but yeah, I want to talk about Anne Heche more, but let's I don't know, put an earmark on that.
Well, let me ask you something. If we can crack this open, I have a question for you about the movie 6 Days, 7 Nights.
Yes.
Who is the bad guy in this movie? Who is the antagonist?
Does there need to be one?
Ah, yes, there does. There needs.
Fairly. It does?
I mean, Joseph Campbell out here. I mean, you got to have an antagonist. Like the antagonist doesn't have to be personified necessarily. The antagonist can be a story of man versus self or man versus nature or woman.
Then I would say nature.
I would say no, you're wrong.
They have to contend with lightning storms. They've got to contend with snake in the pants. They got to contend with a scorpion in the collar.
Yeah.
They got to contend with I know. The antagonist of this movie is Xanax.
Oh, okay. Big Pharma is the bad guy. I will buy...
It completely... The second that Anne Heche takes Xanax in this movie, Robin, considering Anne Heche's mental stuff, I want to be specific in calling her Robin when talking about that.
Okay, yes. When Robin is taking fistfuls of Xanax in the movie.
When Robin starts popping her Xanax during the storm, her personality changes entirely for about the next 40 minutes of the film.
So are you arguing that this movie is a dream? That that actually at the end of the first act, like the plane actually makes it to Tahiti safely, but she's just completely zanned out for the whole photo shoot and is hallucinating all of this?
There was a time I would have said that. I find those to be kind of, I don't know, a little insufferable, those theories nowadays. I'd rather just take the movie for the text it's presenting.
Okay. I would say that you took a different tack with Don Juan DeMarco, but we're not about the past here. We're about the future.
I was reading between the lines on that one. I wasn't inventing a whole imagined scenario.
Yeah, and I'm reading between the lines on her prescription bottle about how many of those she's supposed to be taking.
Okay.
I don't think it's a man versus nature story because nature is being so nice to them. Nature,
it's true.
They crash land and then it's like we need to find water. Okay, that sounds like it'd be tough. Actually, no. There's a lake like right over there.
Yes.
And
yep.
The wild animals they encounter are fairly benign, and even the snake that swims up Anne Heche's shorts when she's fetching water, or the scorpion that gets on her hair, both resolved quickly by Harrison Ford grabbing it and throwing it away from them.
Yes.
Food abundant. They kill a peacock,
yep.
and then it just goes straight to spit roasting it with a nice cherry marinade, and it's delicious. Apparently,
they break their plane, the wheels off their plane, and they can't take off.
Yeah.
Except that they find another plane that has pontoons, in which allows them to take off.
Yeah. I have been on camping trips that have been more stressful contests of man versus nature than this. Like
but they haven't been able to change their clothes.
No, they change their clothes a lot of times. She has like 3 different outfits.
But not her underwear.
Yeah, no, boy. Robin's flying to a work event to do a job, and she has not packed a bra, which is like, hey, you know what? It's the 90s. Dress however you want to, but yeah, it's...
she has a bikini top later, though.
She does have a bikini top, which she's not... And again, listen, hey, you know what, girl? You do whatever you want, but this is a... It's a choice. It's a fashion choice. It's a movie choice. Do you think... Okay, but so if nature's not the bad guy, could be Big Pharma, could be Xanax.
Okay.
Do we want to...
Oh, you're asking for more guesses?
I mean, like, I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on who the bad guy could be?
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. The antagonist would be the fabric of reality. No, not the fabric of reality. How about...
Yeah.
Let's see. It's Mother Earth. It's Father Time.
Oh man, we are going for it.
Is it Uncle Fate?
I mean, okay. I could see that. I could have. So it's
second cousin Fate.
So the antagonist is Fate because it's like she's fated to be with David Schwimmer, but she's fighting against expectations or the kind of momentum of her comfortable New York life.
Well, okay, listen. Is this movie an adventure, or is this movie a romantic comedy?
Oh, there's the question.
Because those are two very different things. The antagonist in an adventure film is nature.
Yeah.
The antagonist, or Deus Ex Machina in a romantic comedy, is fate pushing two people together despite their circumstances.
Yeah, sort of a forces of nature type thing, if you will.
So, but no, we said nature was for adventure films.
But...
Force
it again.
So yes, this structurally is no different than like Serendipity, where you have two people on opposite sides of New York that shouldn't be crossing paths all the time.
Yeah.
This is two people who shouldn't have ever met, meeting under circumstances in which fate thwarts their path so that they have to fall in love.
Yeah, really, if the plane hadn't crashed, they never would have fallen in love, which, as far as I'm concerned, is kind of an argument against them being together. It seems like you bonded in a traumatic situation.
Agreed. But to the movie's benefit, they address that at the very end.
I mean, when they're talking about how it's going to make their lives really, really complicated now that they're together? I mean... They asked the question at the very least. I mean, she's like, tell me what's going on here. Mm-hmm. So they get back. Let's give them the context of the end without talking about the movie at all. Folks, it's a movie about two people who crash land on a desert island. Our audience is smart, Landon. They're arguably some of the smartest people on Earth. They can piece together what happens.
They get back from the deserted island, and Harrison Ford is in the hospital. After this huge ordeal, she... sees David Schwimmer again and realizes, I don't think I actually love you. I don't think we should get married.
Yeah.
Then she goes to see Harrison Ford in the hospital and says, okay, what are we doing here? Was there something actually here?
Right.
Or was it the fact that we were in this situation together.
Yes. Okay.
And he says there was something here.
Yeah. Yeah, but they kind of have this mutual agreement that they can't make it work. Okay, so yeah, the movie is outright telling us this is a bad idea. But I guess on the other hand, if the alternate option is her staying with David Schwimmer, the movie has also made clear that that's going to be a bad choice too. It's not like she's
Correct.
thrown away anything good.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Do you think David Schwimmer is the bad guy in this movie?
No.
I mean, he's a bad guy.
I don't even think he's a bad guy.
He's
an annoying guy.
I don't think he's a good guy. I personally think that cheating on your fiance when she's like marooned on a desert island is kind of a dick move.
Well, yes, but I mean, he doesn't do it to spite her. He's just weak.
Yes, he's weak, but also he waits about roughly 24 hours after her plane disappears to succumb to his weakness.
I mean, I'm not defending his actions. I'm saying him as a character. He's just kind of a wet noodle.
He is
like
yes.
There's, and that brings up something I want to bring up later that I'm going to call and foreshadow by calling the Schwimmer Pullman conundrum.
Oh, okay. That sounds like that sounds like some kind of test at Starfleet. You know, you no one can beat the Schwimmer Pullman conundrum.
But we're not quite there yet. I want to get into talking about this movie before we start pulling some of this stuff apart.
Yes. Well, all right. Well, look, I'm out of guesses as to who the antagonist is.
Okay.
But you know, I think that might be an issue that this movie has. We'll find out as we get into our discussion.
We just might have to change the lenses of our view of it to determine that. Like, if you've got your adventure lens on, like, yeah, there's no protagonist or no antagonist here. If you've got your romantic comedy lens on, I think there's as much antagonist here as there is in, I don't know, You've Got Mail.
So what you're saying is, much like Kathleen Turner in Romancing the Stone has to chop the heels off of her shoes in order to get by in the jungle, we too must chop off our high-heeled perceptions of what this film should be and turn it into a different type of perception.
I think what's missing here from The Lost City and Romancing the Stone is that there is really no adventure.
What's missing
a detour.
What's missing from 6 Days, 7 Nights and Romancing the Stone?
What's missing here, is an adventure.
Yes.
Like there's the stone, the whole treasure hunt of both of those movies that kind of facilitate the falling in love part of those characters. Here, it's just the falling in love part and a slight detour from what they had in store for themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
would this film be improved with a treasure hunt?
I think it would. I think this movie would be improved with an actual adventure, or it would be improved with an actual love story. I think that what we have here is not serving either of its masters.
Fair. Here's a question for you, though, and I realize I hate playing Monday Writers Room speculation. Simulation.
Do we hate it? Because we do it a lot for people who hate a thing.
I do a lot of things I hate.
I mean, I don't know. I hate cleaning the shower, which is why my shower is in pretty bad shape.
I hate getting up every day, but I do it anyway.
Wow. Okay. I think we're describing different problems that we have. Anyway, go on ahead.
I'm wondering if there was some sort of more adventure elements in this script, because there are little flavors of it, i.e. the pirates, i.e. falling into a crevasse into the middle of the island.
For some fucking reason, 1 second of crevasse.
Just rolling out of a hole, not seeing. What does the inside of this island look like?
Yeah.
Harrison Ford and Anne Heche know. We don't.
No, we don't. It's literally like they're walking up a hill, the ground crumbles beneath them, and I'm like, okay, time for a whole new thing to start happening. And no, it's just like a slide at Disneyland or something, and they just shoot out the bottom, and except for a scorpion, they're good.
My question to you is, when Harrison Ford signed on to this, did those elements get removed to not make it too closely associated or resembling a Indiana Jones movie.
Are you saying that Harrison Ford insisted those things got taken out so he wasn't being too derivative of his previous works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
I would buy Harrison Ford being grumpy and saying, no, I'm not going to keep doing the same shit. I'm a better actor than that. I would have a hard time seeing a movie studio trying to make money be like, hey, we're paying Harrison Ford money. Let's take out the shit that Harrison Ford is established to be good at and that audiences pay money to see.
That's fair. But Harrison Ford in the 90s, his power... I don't think you can underestimate the power of superstars, especially in the 90s.
Never accuse me of underestimating the power of superstars. I have never once done it, and I never would.
He was instrumental in getting Anne Heche cast in this film. So, like, clearly creative decisions, stemmed from the idea that this is a Harrison Ford movie.
Sure.
And I 100% think he would have the pull to ask for the script changes.
I don't doubt that at all. I would totally look. I totally buy that he had the juice to get the script changed around. But if we're trying to and I agree with you, it feels like there was a different movie at some stage than what we get. Like much like The Lost City, I am searching for the lost screenplay. The lost movie. We're looking at ruins of something that was once magnificent, I feel like. Or at least pretty good.
Pretty good. So, this movie kind of breaks down into a couple different chunks that I thought we can cover.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the pre-crash.
AKA the good part of the movie.
Fair. There's the deserted island portion of the movie.
Yes.
Then there's a subpoint of David Schwimmer and Angelique, I think is her name.
Yeah.
The character's name.
Yes.
Who?
Angelica.
So what's his character's name? He's just David Schwimmer.
He's David Schwimmer. His character's name is Frank.
Frank. That's
Frank. But we're calling him
Frank
David
and
Schwimmer.
Robin. Oh God. Okay. So David Schwimmer, Jacqueline, Obradors, their subplot of
doing it. Being sad, doing it,
grieving and doing it.
Going at the sight of boobs.
So that's two sections and one subsection.
Yeah.
And then the
like
final
the
section. The final section
Article
is
5.
Once they rescue themselves.
Yes.
And being back on the island.
Yes. The denouement.
You'd almost say that's a 3-act structure.
You would almost say that, except that there was then a subsection in there. The 3-act 1 subsection structure never really caught on quite as much. This movie, boy, that first act. Let's start with the good news. I was so on board for the first act. I was buckling my seatbelt. I was tucking into my in-flight meal. I was rubbing my palms together. You never want to sit next to me on a plane. It's like, we're in New York and it's cold as shit, like it's snowing, and Anne Heche is coming up out of the subway on what is very much a fake New York street in LA with fake snow getting dumped.
Yes, not the sweeping helicopter shots of New York.
No, those seem to be establishing shots of New York from a movie in the late 80s, and then as evidenced by the very different looking taxis and police cars on the fake New York street that we go to. That's how you know the movie's really begun. But she's overworked career woman. Yes.
I want to take us back even further.
Okay, production company logos.
Yes, actually.
Oh, Touchstone Pictures, man.
It's just a fucking time and place.
I love it.
The Touchstone.
It's more like the best content in the world.
Whatever it is. Okay, it is specifically Touchstone, but it's also the progression of the logos and their songs. It's just like you get the Touchstone moment, and when I saw Touchstone movies, like I got really excited as a kid because I'm like, oh, these are going to be some fun ass times.
You're basically romancing the touchstone.
Then you've got the next logo, that plays with its own score. Then it kicks into like the old school Hollywood score over like TriStar presents. This isn't a TriStar film, but Touchstone presents. And then the sweeping shots of the city, and it's just like, man, that was 90s cinema. That was 80s cinema. I'm not saying we need to do that now. I'm just saying I miss it.
There's something about, I completely agree, the Touchstone music, and then also just the way the titles look, like the kind of old Miami font. I feel like, I don't know, I think the Birdcage uses the same font as this. But it's just kind of a stylized font, you get the, Harrison
Ford.
Ford.
An Art Deco sort of deal, yeah.
Anne Heche, and then she's coming up out of the subway. 6 days, 7 nights. It's just, yeah, it is 100% a thing that just comes from sense memories of like, oh boy, mom and dad went to Blockbuster and we're going to watch a movie tonight, and you're sitting on the floor and they're eating popcorn, and we talk about our age gap a lot, but there are certain movie going experiences that we still can share, and I think that's beautiful.
Okay, Anne Heche, she works at a fashion magazine.
You can tell she's the main character because she's the only one on the New York City street wearing a red coat. But yeah, works at a fashion magazine.
And she also has very typical 80s, 90s New York business, which is she exits the subway station and spills a little bit of coffee on her hand and disgustedly throws it in the trash.
Hey, watch it! Oh, God. Now that I'm drinking coffee, I've been waiting for that to happen. I've been waiting for a jerk to bump into me and I spill my coffee. Goes to work. Her boss is Allison, Janney. Fuck yes. I hooting and hollering like I've never hooted or hollered before. And working on, and it's Dazzle magazine is like Cosmo. It's like all tips about how to make your man horny. They're working on some photo shoot for an article about how to get ahead in a male-dominated workplace.
Which is, I don't know. This is what bums me out about late 90s stuff, is like we're fucking talking about that in like the early 80s, and it's like 15 years later, and this is still like what's in the zeitgeist of adult conversation.
Yeah, I don't know, man. There's a lot of things to get mad about in the world.
There is, but it's just like, okay, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, would you agree that that's the weakest part of this movie?
No,
is the gender dynamics.
I think the weakest part of this movie is the structure of the plot and the pacing. So
okay, all right.
I'm giving Landon. I'm giving a green light to all of the gender dynamics in this movie. I endorse them all wholeheartedly, and it represents what I truly believe.
Fair. Okay.
Her boss is Allison Janney. Allison Janney's secretary is Amy Sedaris. Does she get lines? No, but holy shit, she's there. Allison Janney also is doing a thing that you've talked about in the past, where she is looking at a bunch of layout options for the magazine, and she has them all spread out on the floor all around
What
her.
is it about the floor? I don't get it.
I mean, I don't either. She has a very large office with a perfectly fine desk, but
you're gonna get a shoe print on one, and then suddenly you've got incriminating evidence. If you're gonna try to get rid of the body that you killed after hours, they see your shoe print on a dusty old headshot of someone, and they can match it to your boot.
Yeah, to be fair, Allison Janney in this does have kind of the vibes of someone who Lieutenant Columbo would be investigating, and that is the kind of thing that he would pick up on. Low-key, this is going to become a Columbo podcast now that I'm watching it, and I have no one to talk to about Columbo except Landon, because I don't know anyone else who watches it. But I don't know, like, she's at the office. She is very busy and overworked, but also she and Allison Janney have a fun dynamic. She's clearly good at her job. Allison Janney likes her. And she receives a gigantic bouquet of tropical flowers from David Schwimmer, who is freshly back from a trip to London, a business trip. And he has got a card attached saying, "Meet me at this fancy restaurant tonight." And there's a hula girl doll in the flower bouquet, and the note says, "Bring the hula girl."
And she also kind of rolls her eyes at this moment. I mean, it's one of these I don't know. It's not really an indication of where things will end up, but she's like, oh, he's doing stuff like this all the time, and like she kind of appreciates it in a kind of a cute way, but you don't really get that it's her thing.
The note says, like, it's been an eternity. I miss you. It feels like an eternity. And Allison Janney's like, how long was he gone? Oh, 2 days. I like Anne Heche's performance in this so much, and I like the first act of this movie so much, because
I do too.
Anne Heche is doing a lot to kind of convey this sense of like, yeah, this guy is sweet, and he really likes me a lot, and you know what, and it's nice, and and it's easy, and I'm not thinking too much about if I actually like this guy as much as he likes me. And
remember that when the Schwimmer Pullman conundrum comes up.
Okay. Yes, once we enter the Schwimmer dimension, the Klingons have decloaked off the port bow. But so, yeah, all of this, any sense that she's not fully committed to this relationship with him is fully conveyed by her eyes and looks that she does, and just very subtle acting stuff. The script doesn't, there's no... The script does not hit this over the head, and as the movie goes on, the script kind of cuts bait on this thing entirely. But up front, I like it because it's suggesting some depth to her character. So, like, look, let's start swimming with sharks, if you will.
Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
I see this bouquet from her boyfriend, and I immediately think, aha, her boyfriend is going to break up with her in the next scene. We've seen it all before. Lady is invited out to what seems to be a very fancy romantic dinner, but it's actually a breakup dinner.
Interesting. And then what does she say when she arrives at the dinner to meet the Schwimm?
The first thing she does when she sits down with him, and she says, "You're not breaking up with me, are you? Because 69% of women get broken up with in restaurants." And David Schwimmer says no. He says that actually he wants to increase the romanticism of their relationship. And basically, they're going to be swimming to Cambodia. Nope, actually, they're swimming to Tahiti together on this vacation. 6 days, 7 nights. We get the title right up front. But he says also, like, I cleared your PTO with your boss.
Oh my God.
In advance. Okay.
Yes.
What color of flag is that, Landon? Is it green?
I don't know. I'm colorblind.
I just like the thought of trying to think of, like, if I called my girlfriend's boss and booked a week of her PTO without her knowing about it.
It's weird. This was like very prevalent. Like, we talked a lot about this in Loser, and I don't want to relitigate that movie at all.
I'd love to not relitigate that.
We won't. However, there is this kind of sense of the heroic, going to, absurd lengths for, romantic gestures.
Yep.
That was just shoved down our throats in the 90s and early 2000s.
David Schwimmer really could be Jason Biggs' character from Loser. After he and Mina Suvari break up, he no longer has dibs on her eggs, and then he's like, this is him years later, still trying to be a nice guy, super overcompensate, just like everything's a grand romantic gesture.
But this is where I don't think it's written or really. It's not written here, but David Schwimmer, even on Friends, has a sort of, like, he's a little too tight.
Oh yeah, that's his
tightly
brand.
Wound. Yeah. Where, like, there's the Jason Biggs and Loser, like, have dibs on your eggs sort of mentality. Nice guys finish last, and as last, this is my consolation prize. But David Schwimmer in this is like, he takes care of himself physically, he makes a lot of money. And there's just a sort of, like, I'm entitled to your eggs. I'm going to be romantic. I want to be romantic.
Yes.
But, like, this is part and parcel. Like, I'm going to do these big grand gestures for you because I have dibs on your eggs.
I'm taking better care of your eggs than anybody else.
I right the second decided I don't ever want to talk about that again.
Okay. Okay.
As it was coming up, I know I started it, but I want to I don't feel comfortable talking about that anymore. It suddenly hit me very hard.
Okay, I'm just gonna throw all of my I am the Eggman material into the trash and move on. Anne Heche is not at all put off by the fact that he has preemptively assumed that she wants to go on this week-long tropical vacation, and next thing you know, they're on the plane and they're flying. I want to just, but to talk just a little more about David Schwimmer.
Oh yes,
I will. I went into this assuming, okay, he's gonna break up with her at the dinner. He doesn't. Okay, I'm surprised. Then I'm assuming, okay, but then David Schwimmer is going to be either he's going to cheat on her immediately, or it's going to somehow become clear that he's already been cheating on her. A, or B, he's going to be the kind of boyfriend who is very aloof and not actually listening and not attentive to her and her needs. And he's neither of those archetypes. And I think that David Schwimmer in this movie is one of the most interesting things about it, because he is a specific kind of shitty movie boyfriend that I haven't really seen a lot of. And I really feel like he is refuting the nice guy archetype better than a lot of movies, and especially a lot of movies of this era have. Like, because he's a dude who is like, oh, I love you so much. Like, he's very, very much a nice guy who is all about big gestures, and then the second the chips are down, he cheats on her immediately and then just whines about it nonstop and and is performatively guilty about it. Skewer that. I respect it.
You have defined for me. You've perfectly set up the Schwimmer-Pullman conundrum.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, then proceed, Admiral. Do we want to sail into that?
Yes, I do, because what you're describing is like, I want to talk about Bill Pullman in Sleepless in Seattle.
Okay. I thought you were going to talk about him in Independence Day, and I had no idea what the president in that movie had to do with 6 Days, 7 Nights.
Well, Harrison Ford played a president in Air Force One.
Okay, well, there you go.
The Pullman-Schwimmer conundrum is Sleepless in Seattle, for me, is a charming movie.
Sure.
And, you cannot refute the chemistry of its leads and the kind of good intentions the movie has and the fun time it is. But I have a hard time watching that and going, man, Bill Pullman just got fucking fucked over here.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy that just, like, there's really nothing wrong with him. He's just kind of, he's got a head cold.
Yeah. Shame on him. He should have been masking.
That is one end of the spectrum of this bizarre character that doesn't exist in a lot of these movies. The other end is the David Schwimmer that you just described, where it's like, well, yeah, he's not really someone to break up with unless you have the antagonist of the movie introducing a passionate kind of chemistry with somebody else. I realize antagonist was kind of a weird way to describe that,
nature.
But pulling from our earlier conversation.
Nature introduces a situation where she's paired with someone else. Yes.
It's like, I don't really have a definition for this, but like what you described of the other like shitty boyfriends, the ones that cheat right away, the ones that are, whatever. It's clear they need a comeuppance, and they need, like, the woman needs to get out of the situation,
yes.
right? It's only a matter of time before they're found out.
Yeah.
With the Bill Pullman, David Schwimmer characters here, like, they could, in theory, if the events of this movie didn't happen, they would be together for 15 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, it might not, it would be like Faye Dunaway in Don Juan DeMarco. Like,
yes.
It's a simmer. It's not a blazing passion of suns. It's, what's wrong with a little, just kind of like coasting.
Yeah. They're not going to be a flight of eagles, but that's okay. Harrison Ford and Anne Heche, that's the flight of eagles.
Exactly. So, like, it's weird because I don't want to root against him. The only reason I'm rooting against David Schwimmer in this movie is, like, he's a little whiny and annoying.
Yeah.
But, like, otherwise, before he cheats on her, like, he's just kind of a lot.
Yeah, he's like... there's a certain subtlety to the way that he sucks early on, too, where it's like, you watching it, it's like, I know the movie wants me to not like this guy. David Schwimmer has made a bunch of choices as an actor to make clear that I'm not supposed to like this guy, but it's mainly that I don't like him because he's just sort of annoying.
Yeah, I don't even know that the movie's trying to make us not like him. I think we are conditioned to think that way about these characters, with 25 years since this movie.
Sure.
But, he's on the biggest fucking sitcom ever right now.
Okay.
I would imagine he probably needs to bring a little bit of charm to him.
True. I mean, I guess it's just we're also conditioned, and audiences at the time were conditioned to not like him because the poster for this movie is Anne Heche and Harrison Ford. You see her kissing David Schwimmer, it's like, well, I know what's going to happen to this guy. Like, this guy is about to get giga-cucked by one of the most ruggedly handsome people who's ever existed.
Yeah.
But I guess you're right, because something that I noticed in these early scenes with them at the resort just having a nice time is that, and I give the script credit for this too, their interplay, him and Anne Heche, is cute. Like, they have like a lot of kind of back and forth that is reminiscent of kind of just the dumb inside jokes or turns of phrase that you use when you've been with someone for a while. Like, there's this scene early on, they're lying on the beach together. David Schwimmer is like noticing he's getting kind of sunburned, and Anne Heche says, "You want me to put some cream on you?" And Schwimmer goes, "You'd do that for me? You'd cream me up?" And just kind of being playful and funny. And it's like, I don't know. My girlfriend and I say dumb shit like that to each other all the time. I'd like to think that our relationship is on a better trajectory than this one is, but
don't get on any planes anytime soon.
I have terrible news for you about our plans in the coming month. But nothing in the environment of the movie is trying to make us not like David Schwimmer's character. Like, maybe it's just we know that there's got to be something wrong with this guy because it's not him with Anne Heche on the poster.
It's just, this is the thing of, like, this movie doesn't make so much a big deal of it, but I think it speaks to the kind of tropes of the genre where, like, Sleepless in Seattle is very much like there's a mysticism in the air. Like, fate is a character that says these two should not be together.
Yeah.
These two should be together.
Sure.
And I feel like this is like, just, it doesn't address that, but it still uses that.
Yeah.
Like, there might not be anything specifically wrong with David Schwimmer, but these two weren't meant to be together. Her and Harrison Ford were meant to be together.
Yeah.
And so that, it's just, it's less a character thing and it's less a development thing than just like plot mechanics.
Mm-hmm. That's what David Schwimmer gets for being in this movie. If you're David Schwimmer, just don't be in. If you're a David Schwimmer type, just don't be in this movie.
I also want to give this movie credit. It's called 6 Days, 7 Nights.
Okay.
The movie poster shows a tropical island.
Yeah.
The trailers presumably show tropical island.
Yeah.
This movie takes 5 minutes to get us to a tropical island.
You know what? You gotta respect it. We like the opening credits are still scrolling when we get a beautiful shot of a jet flying towards a tropical island, and steel drum band music too. There's like the kind of New York score type music, and then as soon as he like shows her the brochure for the vacation, it's just like do 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 do.
You see Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman walking Bernie in the background.
Yes, yeah, exactly. All one shared universe. You see Don Juan finding his Doña Ana on one of the other beaches.
Oh my God.
And also Harrison Ford is the person who flies the tiny prop plane that they get on to go from Tahiti out to the island of Manatea, and
yeah, and I wanted to kind of paint this out as well. Take the Roger Ebert school of writing of make them feel what it was like.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure.
We've gone 20 minutes into this movie, Is it 20 minutes? No, probably at the 10-minute mark.
We meet Harrison, like, we see Harrison Ford for the first time when directed by Ivan Reitman fades up on screen at the end of the opening credits. He's working on his plane.
Fair point. But, like, they push, like, they give him an introduction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we see the, like, okay, this is going to be Anne Heche's adventure, right?
Yes.
She's going to be the fish out of water.
Yes.
Let's get to the place where, the surface of the water that she's going to then exit and thus be out of the water.
Wow. Well done. You were kind of a fish out of water with what you were trying to describe there, but I think you got back in the ocean by the end.
Harrison Ford is part of the world in which she's going to be out of the water with.
Yes.
So, like, he gets his own, like, entrance to a degree. Like, old school Hollywood superstar entrance.
Yes.
And, David Schwimmer, like, says, I got to go check about the tickets or something like that, and leaves her to go find the charter plane that they're going to go to the Makatea Island on.
Yeah.
And as she exits, she can't find it. She's looking at her brochure of, like, the beautiful charter plane and sees this, rickety looking plane that I know Truman knows the name of.
Yeah, sure. It's a Bearcat. It's a something cat. It is a.
I'm sorry. It just seemed like the sort of thing you would know offhand.
My bad. No, it's a de Havilland Beaver, which is
yes.
prop plane from the 40s, and
also one that Harrison Ford owns in real life.
Yes, and one that he has presumably crashed in real life as well. A lot of method work for this movie.
Anyway, it's dripping oil, and, like, when she's like, excuse me, and, you see the mechanic, like, underneath the plane turn with, oil smudges on his face, and, you get your superstar close-up of Harrison Ford.
The plane is dripping oil, and Harrison Ford is dripping sex appeal because the coveralls he's wearing are heavily unzipped. So there is some disbelief from Anne Heche that this rust bucket is the plane that they're going to take to the island, and Harrison Ford has this whole cute thing where, like, he starts saying, like, yeah, I'll be ready in, like, 10 minutes, and then as the conversation goes on and the plane is revealed to be more decrepit, he's like, yeah, 20 minutes, and then by the end of the conversation, he's like, we'll be ready to take off in about 30 minutes. Like, he just keeps... He immediately... I mean, this is the character for him. This is the most Harrison Ford-ass character. It's a kind of grizzled fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants guy who is making it up as he goes along and is barely keeping all of his shit together, but he looks cool doing it.
I mean, minus that last part, that's most of what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Here on this podcast.
You know what, man? I think you look very cool doing it. You got an Eldritch Horror t-shirt on right now. You have some Giallo-style lighting behind you. But, so, I mean, and also then as they're boarding the plane, which is tiny, it has... Yeah. I don't understand how is this profitable for Harrison Ford's charter company. The plane has a pilot seat, a co-pilot seat, and then 2 seats in the back. How are you making enough? And not a lot of cargo room.
I mean, she does offer him $700 later to charter her to back to Tahiti. I mean, $700 for one flight?
I guess, yes. I guess back in the 90s, that money went a lot further, and in Tahitian currency, too. But she and Schwimmer get on board, and then Angelica, his beautiful on-again, off-again girlfriend, very scantily clad, also gets on the plane and somehow finds a way to accidentally fall into David Schwimmer's lap as she's getting into the front seat of the plane, even though Schwimmer's in the back seat.
That's how we know something's gonna go wonky.
Because also he sees her and is like, whoa, boobs! But I see that happen, and immediately I'm like, okay, he's gonna prove to be totally lecherous and be hitting on her the whole flight. No, that doesn't happen. But then I'm also thinking, yes, it's the whole resort is some kind of scam, and it's like a honeypot situation, and she's going to be a temptress who kidnaps him, and then that's like, I knew very little about the plot of this movie going in. I had no idea when the island adventure in Pirates was going to start, and so I spent a lot of this movie being like, okay, and this is part of the Pirates' plan, and this is part of the Pirates' plan. Is this a pirate thing?
You can't say it isn't.
I mean, well, you were
just
saying
doesn't come to
earlier
play later.
you're only going to take the text of the movie as presented, but then
Okay,
if you have
fair.
if you have to see pirates behind every bush, you're really looking.
Well, you know what? Guess who hasn't ever been attacked by pirates? The person who looks for pirates behind every bush.
Okay, you know what? When you're right, you're right. But that also may have something to do with you living in a landlocked state.
Excuse me, I am not landlocked. We have Lake Michigan all along our coast.
Okay, fair. I guess I never stopped to consider lake pirates. But yeah, so they're on the.
I want to see that movie. I want to see that movie. I want to see Lake Pirates.
Okay, the sequel to Lake Placid, Lake Pirates. They're on the island. They're at the resort. They're having a good time. One of the nights at the nightclub, David Schwimmer makes that. When I first see David Schwimmer wearing a suit in this movie, I'm like, that suit looks pretty big on him. Almost reminiscent of David Byrne and Stop Making Sense, but no, that's probably just you being talking heads brained and seeing things that aren't there.
That's just 90s brained.
Then we get to the island, and he's wearing a white suit and white pants that are so goddamn big on him, and I'm like, now movie, you're trying to make me think about David Byrne singing about how his girlfriend is better.
And he does think his girlfriend is better because one of these nights they have a few like romantic moments at the bungalow and at the restaurant on the beach.
Yeah,
and he's taking her for a little sandy stroll, and this is just another indicative characteristic of him, of his romanticism. He says that they've been on a love odyssey, and he then proposes to her.
Yes.
Which she accepts in that moment.
I've always been more of a fan of the love Iliad, but take what you will. Both equally valid. But then I think shortly after proposing, they're at the nightclub on the beach.
Okay.
David Schwimmer leaves.
Oh boy. Yeah, baby.
And a very drunk Harrison Ford comes up and makes a pass at Heche.
Hold on a minute. We're gonna talk about Harrison Ford, drunk Harrison Ford, in just a second. I need to talk. And just you have more musical knowledge than I do,
of a certain type of music. You can tell me more about the Bloodhound Gang. I can tell you more about the various session musicians who worked with Steely Dan.
I don't know about the Bloodhound Gang. I just lived through the Bloodhound Gang.
I know about the Bloodhound Gang because you told me about them, sir. So you're always going to be the one who opened my eyes to the workings of the Bloodhound Gang, who I believe are your favorite band. And you endorse all the messages of their songs and music videos?
No, never.
You were saying that right before we started recording.
At this bar, where we're about to get into this drunk Harrison Ford scene, which is the next 2 hours of this podcast.
Yes.
I have to ask you about a musical genre I have never experienced before.
You've never experienced reggae before?
It's not reggae. It's tropical blues.
Okay, you're right. You're right. This band that's playing live.
This is Taj Mahal, legendary artist Taj Mahal as the entertainer here.
Yeah. And
he is singing the blues with a tropical band.
Yep. I mean, I wasn't necessarily aware of this genre, but I feel like I don't know, is this that different than the cover of Superstitious that they're playing in Vampire in Brooklyn at the nightclub that is also the vampire hunting doctor's office?
Oddly enough, this film also ends with a Bob Marley song.
I mean, the many connections. How do we know that this isn't the island that the vampire in Brooklyn left?
God.
Maximilian was on this island.
They aren't pirates, they're vampire hunters.
Oh man,
that wasn't the captain of a ship. That was a vampire trying to escape.
Then I don't buy that these are the vampire hunters who killed all of Maximilian the vampire's friends, because these are not very smart vampire hunters. They lost so much blood in the process of trying to exterminate the island vampires that they're just woozy and will fall for any old trick.
That's why there's only 3 of them left.
I suppose that's true. They're the last of their kind. They also need to go to Brooklyn to find wives.
Pirate in Brooklyn.
I'd watch that too. Lake Pirates, Pirates in Brooklyn. Make more movies about pirates.
Okay, drunk Harrison Ford.
Drunk Harrison Ford. He's got a very full gin and tonic in his hand, but he's clearly knocked a few back. He is, at first, seemingly, he's standing right by the stage, and it almost looks as though he's patting one of the musicians on the back as they're playing, just as if to say, like, good job, I agree, it's good stuff. But, yes, then he comes over and starts making a pass at Anne Heche, but he does not remember her, so he starts off with, like, how long have you been on Mankatea?
This is the best written scene in the movie.
It's so good.
This is the best performed scene in the movie.
Possibly, yes.
Harrison Ford playing drunk, this specific kind of drunk.
Yes.
Is just, I cannot picture another moment in his filmography that he plays so perfectly.
Yeah. This really stood out to me. This also stood out in reviews. I think Roger Ebert singled this out in his review, this scene, as like a real kind of delight. He's playing drunk and pathetic. Like, he is playing drunk in a way that's kind of like it's funny the way that he's drunk, but it's also like, it's not like drunk and, oh, what a charmer, what a rapscallion. It's like, oh yeah, man, like you're not doing so great. Like, you're having a tough time.
There's also kind of a shamelessness to it.
Yes.
I mean, you can kind of taste the self-loathing a little bit, but there's not enough shame that it's going to stop him from doing it.
No.
Like, this is what he does on Tuesday nights.
Yes, exactly.
I just watched a documentary. It was a paranormal documentary, and I don't need to go into any more details than that, but they had like a Talking Heads interview with like a local who had just like black teeth and, you know, a big ass beard, but he was wearing a t-shirt that looked like it maybe belonged on Harrison Ford in this movie, especially in this like after hour scene. It just had like a Robert Crumb style drawing of a buxom lady, and it said, "Dirty men need love too."
Oh my god. That basically that should be a bumper sticker on his plane. That is completely the ethos of his character. He is just kind of like he's given up on it all, and he's just kind of horny and wants to have a good time. Yeah, like he asks her. He comes up. His opening line is like, "So how long have you been here? How long have you been at
on this island?
How long have you been at Mankatea?" And she's like, Are you joking? You flew me here 5 hours ago." And he's kind of like, "Oh yeah, well, a lot's happened since then." And on my first viewing, I took that to mean like, yeah, okay, so he and his girlfriend from the plane must have had a big fight and broken up. On repeat viewings, it's just, oh no, he's just flailing. He's just trying to find anything to say to make this work. He tries to sit down and he misses the chair. It's and then I think, and he says a line that is so great. He's talking about, all the people who come here as tourists and everything, and how laughable it is that people come here trying to reinvigorate their relationships or find a new romance or something. And she goes like, "Oh, what, do you think that can't happen? Do you think that's a lie?" And he just goes, "It's an island, babe. If you don't bring it here, you won't find it here." And man, a perfectly delivered line, a perfectly written line, and I was just, again, like, fuck yes, this movie is setting up the stakes. This movie is laying out its thesis statement. I am ready for it. So anyway, the morning after Harrison Ford's wonderful drunken attempt to make a pass at her, they're relaxing on the beach when they get a phone call from Allison Janney. Typically, getting a phone call from Allison Janney is the greatest thing that can possibly happen to a person, but in this case, no, It's because she's asking Anne Heche to get on a plane back to Tahiti for this last-minute photo shoot that she has to do.
Oh, is she?
What was that?
I said, oh, is she?
Oh, she is.
She is, yes.
And so she tries to lay down some boundaries with her boss, but that just doesn't work. She's totally it's a toxic situation. What do you do? What's this bit? I mean,
oh, Truman, you're just so conveniently overlooking the very important line that has come from this movie identifying a ally I have in favor of parameters.
Oh, yes, of course. The big parameters line. Part of how Allison Janney convinces newly engaged Anne Heche to take off from her vacation and burn one of her 6 days and 7 nights doing work is saying you need to establish parameters in your relationship with Frank and show because whatever percentage of women are forced to quit their jobs 1 year after marriage. So
to her benefit, Anne Heche says, well, that's something we just made up and put in our magazine.
Yes. But she still does it.
However, in the future, whenever you take me a task for parameters, I may be like, they're good enough for Allison Janney. Are they not good enough for you, Truman?
Okay. I have a better understanding of your obsession with parameters because you saw this movie at an early age and heard Allison Janney tell you how important parameters are.
Can you blame me?
My Christian friend who told me about the pirate conclusion to this movie, if he told me instead, like, oh, you gotta see 6 days, 7 nights, Allison Janney makes a really good point about establishing boundaries and professional responsibilities and relationships, then maybe I would be like you and we wouldn't have had to argue so many times about your thirst for parameters. She explains this to David Schwimmer that she has to go. David Schwimmer is big sad about it. He is pouty and guilting her like crazy. And there's a lot of good lines in this movie. I think that aspects of this movie are poorly written and aspects of this movie are brilliantly written. And one of them is you know, when basically he says to her, well, if I go with you, I'll resent the fact that I'm there. And if I stay here, I'll miss you, but you'll feel guilty. And I like that better.
Great line. This really does feel like a script benefited from punch-ups.
Yes.
Especially considering the writer has only written one other movie.
But a super memorable movie that everybody knows about. So.
Oh, yeah. That we'll mention right now and not totally do in the future.
No.
But this feels like, I don't know, Dana Gould came in for a day to punch up some jokey lines.
Yes, it's a bunch of really solid knockout punches scattered into a script that otherwise is mostly kind of rope-a-doping you out, and that's all the boxing metaphors I have. So she goes to Harrison Ford and says, hey, I need you to fly me to Tahiti, and basically offers him $700 to do it. And he reluctantly agrees, loads up some additional hotel surplus stuff that he's going to try and sell in Tahiti onto the plane, and they take off at night and fly off, and storm clouds on the horizon. I wonder if that's going to lead to the premise of the movie happening. Oh, well. And we then get, I think, my favorite sequence in the movie, where the plane is flying into the storm, things are getting bumpy, and lightning is crashing.
For some reason,
Robin is mainlining Xanax to try and stay calm.
For some reason, I knew you were going to flag that. It went back to our very first episode about Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre.
Yeah.
You really liking the click, click, click opening of that. I'm like, I bet Truman's gonna love this cross-cutting here.
It's because it's like the music is getting ominous and dark, and the storm clouds are growing up the plane. This tiny little plane is flying into, and rain spattering the windshield, and like they've been having an argument already on the plane, Anne Heche and Harrison Ford, about like the magazine that she works at and women versus men stuff. And they're flying into it, ominous tones on the soundtrack, and then we cut back to the resort, and it's raining, and David Schwimmer is being led to his seat at the dinner theater where Harrison Ford's girlfriend, the beautiful lady, is like the featured dancer in the Angelica.
I think we can probably not fall into the white podcaster trope of calling her Harrison Ford's girlfriend.
Okay. Although that is all the movie gives her. Like,
it's fair, but we could do better than the movie.
It's being charitable to call her Harrison Ford's girlfriend instead of what the movie basically calls her, which is lady with boobs. But Angelica is the featured lead dancer in the Tropical Island dancing show that night. and Schwimmer is sitting alone at a table drinking tropical drinks and just being completely gobsmacked by how beautiful Angelica is. And it's this tribal drummy music with the ominous score, and we're cutting back and forth between the plane hitting more and more turbulence and Robin getting all loopy off of Xanax and Harrison Ford trying to keep the plane under control, and David Schwimmer sitting there watching the dancing show and just getting into the music and like locking eyes with Angelica, and Angelica's gesturing to him, and David Schwimmer is like dancing in his seat, jerking his head back and forth, aggressively eating pineapples out of his drink. I know that Ivan Reitman probably has like 5 straight minutes of just close up on David Schwimmer just doing little dance bits, and he has
45 seconds, but he used them all very effectively.
He used them effectively. I release the Schwimmer cut of that. I just want that on YouTube, just like nonstop him, just only his face dancing. So this scene, which it's just cross-cutting between the plane crashing on the beach on this uncharted island and David Schwimmer very clearly being seduced by this woman, David Schwimmer, who's already mad at Anne Heche for leaving. Also, I want to make clear, he's not like David Schwimmer is getting horned up for this woman. I'm not suggesting that Angelica is seducing him necessarily or anything like that.
Well, yeah, yes.
David Schwimmer does most of the work on this himself.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
I mean, look, no one is fully innocent in this. I'm just not trying to say she's some kind of temptress. But
no, but even the character later says, you might call me a slut, but blah blah blah. She's very open with her sexuality. She's a
Good
very
for her.
Sex. I mean, yes, in life, as far as this movie goes, she's not written as anything more than a sex bot to not even really seduce men, but be there in open arms, in open bed.
Yes.
For any man, really.
Yeah. Well, you're around. It's they have kind of a polyamory thing going, but the movie doesn't really care to explore that or give it the gravitas that it should. What I like about this, though, is just this is the end of the first act, aka the end of the good part of the movie, although I did not know this at the time. But it's just everything that has been built up in the movie so far, Anne Heche's career and the vacation, her engagement to David Schwimmer, and all this stuff has been set up. The movie has dialed up the intensity. In the audience that you're getting a crash land on a desert island movie, so everybody knows what comes next. But there's just so much intensity of everything has come to a head, and now her relationship with David Schwimmer is at an inflection point. Her relationship with Harrison Ford is at an inflection point, and even just her own personal safety is at an inflection point. And I think it is all just cut together that gives us so much momentum and so much excitement going into what will surely be a great and wonderful second act of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, this movie can be summed up in the 1 hour we just talked about the first part of this movie. Then they're on an island. Now let's go into the final act of this movie.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up. We've been going for a while.
There are a couple things I want to pick out of what you've described there.
Sure.
Which is when they're talking about the magazine on the plane.
Yeah.
There's an important point that I think is worth tracking as far as their relationship is concerned.
Yes.
Because this relationship is between Harrison Ford and Anne Heche is it's really, it is gender dynamics. I mean,
sure.
it's opposites attract, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of the opposites in that equation is their genders.
Yeah.
And when, he asks her, what magazine do you work for? And she pulls out a copy of it, and he reads the cover. It's 10 tips that make your man wild in bed. Blah. And he's like, that's all nonsense. There's only one thing a man needs, and that's for the woman to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And that begins the him liking things simple, her, big city ways, her, I don't even know where she falls on the romanticism. That would be something that would be I think more interesting if it was developed differently.
Exactly.
David Schwimmer loves a romanticism, and she prefers something more simple and finds it in Harrison Ford, but it's not what we get. Because this next part starts, the part with Anne Heche's character falling apart for me starts here with her popping the Xanax.
Yeah.
Like, I can buy, okay, you're popping a Xanax to steady your nerves on a flight. I don't take Xanax. I don't know if they are effective that quickly, but whatever.
Who knows?
She starts popping them one after the other.
Yeah.
And just, like, she's acting drunk.
Yeah.
I feel like she's acting in a way you wouldn't act if you'd taken 5 different Xanax.
I've not tried Xanax either. I don't know, but she is very much just, she's being loopy and is like picking up the plane radio and doing like, attention, Kmart shoppers, or
playing for laughs, like she's in mortal peril and is completely oblivious to it because she's just, out of her mind.
Sure. I agree that it's sort of like muddles her character, which I think already is a fairly muddled character, but I guess I like it in the moment because I think that her performance of drunk and loopy is really funny. Like, she's doing a great job with
agreed.
It doesn't make sense being there.
But, I know, that's not necessarily the problem I have. It's just where the problem starts.
Yes.
Because when she gets to the island, she takes on a different character.
Yeah.
Where, like, there's been nothing up to now of making her the, like, prissy, stuck-up, demanding, room service, sort of, legally blonde-esque character.
Yeah.
And once she's on the island, it's suddenly, like, expecting the unreasonable because, she's used to her city ways.
Sort of agree, soft agree. I think, okay. A question for you. What does Robin want? Like, what motivates her character?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah?
I would say nothing.
There it is. I mean, she does have the perfect life. I mean, basically. I mean, she's got, she has a job that she seems to actively enjoy. There's been some very low-key, soft-pedaled indications that she's not 100% on board with her relationship, but the second she gets on the plane with Harrison Ford, she does not appear to think about David Schwimmer again. He does not come up in her mind until she gets back to the resort at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert, they survive.
I will say, though, that is kind of a mark of the rom-com genre, though, where it's like the whole thing is, like Meg Ryan in Sleepless in Seattle, you think you have what you need until you find the thing that you didn't know you were looking for.
Yes, But at no point on the island is she and Harrison Ford are getting cozy. Is there ever a thing of like she says at one point, we can't, when he says how much he wants to kiss her. But there's never any sense of her grappling like with, we can't be doing this. I'm engaged. I have a good life. I'm engaged to this guy. And there's not, for how much arguing they do on the island and for how much they talk about their lives to some degree, or they talk a lot about Harrison Ford's life, his past, his ex-wife who ran off with his friend and former business partner. There's never any talk about Anne Heche's life. There's never any talk about what's your relationship like? What do you see in this guy? She never has to defend her relationship with this wet noodle, and so we kind of don't get any window into what she's thinking aside from her sort of complaining about general conditions on the island.
Well, part of that is like, we've seen it, and I think that it's like they don't make it a thing, a capital T thing.
Yeah.
Like if they bludgeoned us with that a little bit more, I think this would make more sense.
Yes.
But they play it kind of subtly and like don't really address her needs. I mean, and we get all of Harrison Ford's backstory on the island because we saw all of Anne Heche's thing in the first part of the movie. But now that's where it doesn't succeed, is like we don't leave that first act knowing how she feels about David Schwimmer, really.
Yeah, and also we don't ever see her trying to defend what we've seen or give her spin on what we've seen to this other guy. We never we see her
which
challenging,
is telling in and of itself, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, like she is challenging Harrison Ford on his worldview, and he's defending his worldview, but it never really works that way in reverse, and which I think undercuts the whole love story between these two, because it's like, they've been, after about 20-25 minutes of them being on the island, like there's a couple of like doe-eyed looks to each other, and then eventually they start smooching, and then suddenly this is the world's greatest love story, but it's never really like, yeah, they have, like, a dinner together under the stars. They talk about some stuff, but nothing here ever shows this sense of connection, really, between them, or, like, a sense of them coming together.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, that is the weakness of the script.
Look, I think the real weakness of the script is this, which is that the second this desert island adventure movie gets to the desert island adventure, it completely powers down. This movie gets as lost in the second act as the main characters are in just in the world. Like, this movie, the concept of this movie is two A-list actors on a desert island, marooned. Like, okay, there's naturally stakes there. There's so much to do with that. There are a million options, and this movie runs out of ideas 30 minutes in the second it is doing the premise of the movie, which is...
Let's go into that now.
That's such an achievement.
Okay, because this is perfect segue into this. Anne Heche was not an A-list star here.
Okay.
At all.
Okay.
This is a true sliding doors moment for Anne Heche.
Yes.
Where she was being set up to be the next it girl.
Yeah.
Of Hollywood. And this was supposed to be one of her big launching vehicles. Harrison Ford picked her out specifically. Then 2 days after this film was released, was it released? I think, yeah, it must have been released. She announced her relationship with Ellen DeGeneres.
Yes. And people were totally normal about that in the late 90s.
It was bizarre. I mean, obviously you have the tabloid cycle going at it hardcore, and just the general homophobia and misogyny that was happening in pop culture at the time.
Yeah.
There's a pretty infamous interview with David Letterman with Harrison Ford saying, my love interest in this one is Anne Heche, and David Letterman going, you're going to have a hard time with that one, aren't you? Yeah. So, I mean, that's just generally what the world was like to Anne Heche entering into her leading lady status. And because of that, it just kind of stalled right away, like immediately. 1998 was setting her up to be huge. Psycho, this, that weird Turkish prison movie with Vince Vaughn.
That's news to me.
I can't remember the name of it, but I remember the trailer vividly. And then it didn't happen. It just it didn't happen for her, and she had to go back to supporting roles. And it's such a tragedy because, well, not to mention, okay, and I don't want to get too deep into this, she has a history of mental health issues.
Yeah.
That following this, whatever condition she had before she got famous probably did not help being, entrenched in this tabloid culture.
Being famous has never been good for anybody's mental health.
Yeah. And so you get the weird Barbara Walters interview, and you get the kind of psychological issues she's had throughout her career because of it. Well, I shouldn't say because of it, but, as part of it. And that has kept her, from, I think, the opportunities that her talent really deserves.
Yeah.
Because you look at her in any number of roles that she's been in, she's fantastic in Wag the Dog, and otherwise kind of mid-movie for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, like, I was not really familiar with Anne Heche before this movie because she didn't really take off. Yeah, she passed away a couple years ago, which is tragic and sad. And I don't know, I feel like seeing her in this, I got this real sense of like, wow, why didn't it happen for her? Because she is doing a great job with the material that she has here. And I think that I don't even necessarily know if I think she and Harrison Ford have great charisma together, but I think she is so good. I think that being the city girl in an island adventure movie, I think that it is very easy for that role to come across grating or annoying or not reflect very well. And even though she's doing a fair amount of complaining in this movie, it never comes across as like, oh, look at this Karen being freaking annoying. Like, she is always fun to watch, and she is able to embody this character who knows her way around and can handle herself even if she is a fish out of water. And I don't know. It sucks that that tabloid nonsense, basically, and a certain amount of prejudices kind of got in the way of this launching her further. Because I could see, under other circumstances, a mid-range action movie like this, starring opposite a major leading man, could launch her well, even if the movie didn't necessarily make a lot of money. I could see this proving her as a bankable star.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she ended up having a more interesting career, even if it wasn't a leading career. I mean, she was nominated for 2 daytime Emmys, in which she won 1.
Yeah.
And that was before this, but she also was nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award in 2004 for something called Gracie's Choice. So she's had some accolades, I think, but she's had roles in films like Donnie Brasco, our favorite curmudgeon. Who do you like better, Tommy Lee Jones as a curmudgeon or Harrison Ford?
What
if it was Harrison Ford and Meryl Streep in Hope Springs?
I would honestly like that better, because I feel like I can count on Harrison Ford. Like, Harrison Ford is grumpy, but he's not so grumpy that he walks out of an interview for being asked a question about aliens. Like, if you ask Harrison Ford a dumb question about aliens, he's gonna roll his eyes at you and shrug, but he's not gonna be a dick.
She starred with Jason Statham, our buddy Jason Statham, in a film called Wild Card in 2015. She was also on 30 episodes of Hung, the HBO show with Thomas Jane.
Okay.
So, yeah, she's still had an interesting career, and I don't know. I like her so much that I just wish we had seen more, more opportunities given to her.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
The other thing I want to say too about their chemistry here is this movie is playing on the grand tradition of slapstick comedies and romantic comedies, where it hinges on the kind of Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, or Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant sort of dynamic. Your African queens, your as we already said, Romancing the Stones. There, I feel like, isn't much island conflict, because we are here to see these two people, play off each other. Whether or not that works, I don't know. But, I guess I do know. It doesn't work. But I do think they have chemistry.
I don't know. I mean, look, the first time through, I didn't think they did. On rewatch, I thought maybe. I don't know. On the first go-around, I just felt like they're both very charismatic, but it seemed mismatched. It seemed like a lot of Harrison Ford's growling and yelling was kind of flying past the delivery that Anne Heche was giving. It seemed like they were both playing opposite, a different type. I don't know if that even makes sense, what I'm saying.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I don't know that I agree with it, but I understand what you're saying.
This is the thing, though. We get to the second act, and the movie powers down. The movie loses its way, and I think it's because, I think the reason that a movie like The African Queen is able to be more successful as a romance jungle adventure, or a romance that takes place in a jungle, is because in every scene in that movie, there is some sense of stakes, there is a sense of an objective, what the characters are after and what they want. Yeah. They land on the island, and it's there's a scene of them in the morning where it's establishing, we got no radio, no transponder, we're gonna be here for a long time. Then it's okay, we've got to go find water, and they go find water, and then there's a sequence of okay, we've got to hunt for food, and he's going off to try and kill a peacock, and then it's them eating on the beach that night and having this big conversation. But there's never any bigger sense of what's our plan to get off the island? It basically just, we go into about 20 minutes of this is the getting water scene. Oh no, we've got to reach down her pants to pull a snake out.
Which is why the conflict then becomes the gender dynamics. And why her character takes such a right-hand turn here, because they land on the island. Up to this point, I wouldn't have pegged her as a character that's I want my $700 back.
Yeah.
You didn't get me to the island.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's all this petty bullshit. There is no other conflict, and so it becomes they are two odd couple people that need to how can man and woman coexist, and how can they coexist if they're the only two people on a deserted island?
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's actually a book about a man and a woman in a lush tropical environment trying to get along. It's called The Bible. You heard of it? Or it's at least part of that book. There's a lot of stuff in there. I actually haven't read it. So the thing is, I think this is a great avenue for a, battle of the sexes, men and women, how can they possibly get along story in the middle of this we're trapped on an island thing. The thing is, if it was that Anne Heche's character has one idea or strategy for how to get off the island, and she is trying to pursue that strategy, and Harrison Ford has a competing strategy that he is trying to pursue, and both of these strategies are articulated right after they've gotten off of the crashed plane, and then that kind of underscores all of the subsequent scenes and all of their fights, but instead what we get are just like a bunch of different chores. How do we find water? How do we find food? And it's just them arguing about circumstances during those situations, arguing about I don't know, about you can't kill a peacock, it's such a majestic bird, or like
the conflict comes from her becoming an ignorant, naive, inept woman on an island. She freaks out and goes into the plane to try to I'm gonna do something, and unfurls the inflatable raft inside the plane and smushes her face against it.
Now that's a banger, funny bit of physical comedy that I like quite a lot.
The physical comedy part of it, agreed. But the getting there is just suddenly she just goes into flighty, typical 90s woman panic mode. I phrase that weird.
I think
from a male perspective, screenwriting perspective.
Yeah, no, everyone knows that you're a rampant misogynist, Landon. Yeah, huge fan of Andrew Tate over here, Landon Solano.
You get what I mean.
Yes.
All of the friction between them doing these chores doesn't come from doing the chores. It comes from, oh my god, I'm a city girl in the jungle all of a sudden.
I'm scared of
a
a
pig.
pig.
Mud under my feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. She gets... There's this moment with on the second day when they're the only thing we have to save ourselves is the single flare,
Chekhov's flare,
and the next morning a plane wakes her up and she's like, oh my god, there's a plane, where's the flare? Harrison Ford is drunk asleep and the flare's in his pants. She tries to yank it out and shoots, goes to shoot it in the air, and he turns and trips her, and she ends up shooting a tree instead.
Yeah.
Then he wakes up and he's super pissed and don't you know that was a commercial airliner? They wouldn't have seen it. It'd be just as easy to find a flea on an elephant's ass.
He yells they wouldn't. They're 5 miles high, going 1,000,000 miles an hour. They wouldn't see a nuclear explosion. And he's a salt of the earth man because he says nuclear and not nuclear. I'm just saying, that's how you know.
Oh god.
But
it all hinges on her just being a nuisance to him all of a sudden.
Yes, when the plane first crash lands, and she's all goofed up on Xanax, I'm thinking to myself, how long until we get a shot of her face planting? And sure enough, the morning she opens the door of the plane and tries to take one step off and then face plants hard into the sand. It's great, you knew it. It's a lot of trippy, folly,
But it's a complete 180 from the character that was set up.
Yes,
I feel like.
Yes. No, I agree. I agree with you. One of many reasons that the second act of the movie is just you're dropping off a cliff. It feels like a completely different film.
And it makes me want to say, shit!
Yes, exactly. You jump off the cliff, but then Harrison Ford catches you in his airplane and crashes it. So there's a few minutes of this kind of business around food, water, what have you, the snake in the pants, and then we get just sort of we cut away from they've had their dinner on the beach where they talk about his past and getting left by his wife and everything, and then it's we cut to the next day and it's just these wide shots of the two of them hiking up the side of a mountain, and it's like just ADR voiceover then of Harrison Ford going like, "Oh yeah, I think we're on Manu Manu Island, and Manu Manu has a radio beacon on top of a mountain, and so we go up the mountain, we can turn off the radio beacon, and then people will come out here to check. Oh boy, well I sure hope they get here faster than it takes them to fix something in my apartment." And I'm just like, wait, what? Okay, so you have a plan now to get off the island, but I'm just hearing it in voiceover of YouTube of wide shots of climbing a mountain. Like, where is this coming from? Like, where are your motivations coming from one scene to the next?
Truman, they cut out the treasure hunt scenes and ADR'd the lines over just nature walks.
I mean, did they? This is part of why I feel like I'm looking at the ruins of what was once a much better movie, because it gets very choppy here with what is actually going on. Like, anytime major plot points or developments or explanations of what the characters are doing are delivered in a voiceover line over a wide shot, you know that something got chopped out or two scenes got cut together.
And there's a handful of them in this section of the movie. So like, because they're just kind of going around doing chores and stuff, there's a more hangout vibe version of this movie that this also isn't, that could have been fun, but because it falls somewhere flatly in the middle, some of the scenes are just kind of weird and awkward and like kind of leave a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
The river scene, or the pond scene, the water scene. They need fresh water. They find it, again, conveniently within the second of stating it. Are they on the Lost Island, maybe?
Yeah, it's wild. It's like he's never been, like, they have no idea where they are, but just it's like he knows where to go to get water, and I guess we're assuming this stuff's potable, even though there's snakes swimming around in it.
Well, they run into a wild boar, and Harrison Ford's like, she freaks out because, she's a woman, and Harrison Ford's like, "What are you freaking out for? It's just a pig." And listen, I've never been stranded on a desert island. I have heard that wild boar are incredibly dangerous.
This is true, actually. I would freak the hell out if I encountered a wild boar.
Yeah. She freaks out and runs into the water, and while he's trying to shoo the boar away, a snake swims up her shorts.
Which we don't now... Okay, I'm going to be careful in how I phrase this. I'm not saying I want... Okay. But it's like we see her in the water, and all of a sudden she kind of makes a face and seizes up and tells him, like, "I think something just swam up my shorts." We, the audience, don't see, like, a shot from behind her of a snake swimming through the water. We don't see anything to indicate that this is happening. I'm not saying I need to actually see down her shorts or anything, but, like, we don't know that this is happening.
Well, the thing is, yes, I mean... Because it turns out to be a snake, we need to see the snake at some point before it happens.
Yes.
Otherwise, what this is setting up is Harrison Ford enters the water. She's like, "Get the snake out of my pants." And like, they have a little back and forth here. And he just ends up putting his hand down the front of her pants in a very uncomfortable way for way too long, and then pulls a snake out.
And throws it away.
And just throws it off to the side. The way that should be playing out, if you don't see the snake beforehand, is that she's freaking out over something innocuous.
It's like seaweed or like rubber.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so it's just kind of like something wasn't picked up on the day and they just had to make it work or something.
Yes.
I don't know. But then also his reaction to pulling a snake out, maybe it's just I'm so influenced by Indiana Jones. Like, he's so unflapped by this. He just like, he pulls it out, throws it to the side, and she's like, "Okay, thank you," and then walks off. And he just kind of like smirks to himself, like, "Okay, I just had my hand down her pants," and it was weird. It's just kind of gross.
I get that the movie is just trying to set up kind of sexy comedy circumstances for us. And I think that there's a way that this all could have been put together a little more effectively and better, and maybe paced a little better too, because the scene definitely goes on longer than you need to get the romance beat and the comedy beat out of it. And it's the same with, like, there's the scene of them hiking along, and then the crevasse opens up and they go sliding through tunnels for like 1 second, and then
there's a scorpion, and it's literally the same moment.
Yes, all of the romantic setup of this movie consists of Harrison Ford grabbing wild animals off of Anne Heche and throwing them out of frame, and then from that we are led to believe that a deep love and connection has bloomed. Like post scorpion scene, Harrison Ford walks away, and there's this shot of Anne Heche kind of looking after him with a little something in her eyes, and the soundtrack is going like, and it's like, what about that? That's even less sensual than the first animal he grabbed off of you.
Okay, actually, this is a good place to compare to Lost City.
Okay.
And I'm sorry that you haven't seen it. I'm going to spoil a really great moment in it.
Okay, I feel like Lost City is probably kind of like Columbo in that you can guess what's going on up front and the real joy comes from watching it unfold.
Well, what is so enjoyable and refreshing about that movie is they have a similar fall into water scene where they encounter something slimy and squirmy. So they get out of the water and they're covered in leeches.
Oh.
Now, Sandra Bullock has one or two on her that she's able to get off, but Channing Tatum is covered in them.
The leeches all saw Magic Mike. They want to get close to that action.
Well, yes. I mean, the joke then becomes like he's the one that, is like, ew, 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 and like tears his shirt off and pulls his pants down. And like he has like 7 to 10 leeches just on his butt. It's a close-up of his butt. And then Sandra Bullock has to then pull the leeches off his butt. And it was just like, that is a much more funny and interesting way to go about the scene.
Yet another example of the nature that they are up against in this movie being like bumper bowling type nature.
Yes.
Like with a scene like what you're describing, it's like, yes, it's a romantic comedy in the wilderness. This is not meant to be man versus wild or whatever, but it's still, you're putting them in situations that are acutely stressful and upsetting for comedy value, whereas, they are never challenged that hard by the island in 6 Days, 7 Nights.
Maybe the island is mystical in that it's just for lovers. It brings them there to make people fall in love and then sends them home.
Sort of a Love Island UK, if you will.
Interesting.
So they get to the top of the mountain on the island. Oh shit, there's no radio broadcast beacon here. Oh darn. Harrison Ford gets super mad about this and goes, in a cool scene, he goes into some bushes and we just see the bushes shaking and back and forth as he like growls and swears and punches around. And then Anne Heche has this whole big speech to him about how like, I need you to be my confident captain right now, or else I'm going to fall apart. Don't like it at all. And it's like, this is underserved by the fact that, like, wait, we only found out that Harrison Ford's plan was to get to a beacon, like, 30 seconds ago. We have nothing invested in this.
Yeah.
B, he's been a pretty confident captain this entire time. Like, he knew where to get water. He saved you from a snake and a scorpion. He cooked dinner. Like, he's... there.
Yeah, it's all part of the unreasonable, character that she's suddenly assumed now that she's on the island.
And so then they're up there, and then from the top of the mountain, they spot a boat all the way down in the water beneath them. And it's like, oh shit, let's go back to our raft, and we'll go out on the raft, and we'll get to this boat. And this boat will save us, and we're saved.
Another just kind of like repeating moments where, like, finding the water, the second that they say, how are we ever going to drink and, have water? And then they find water. This is like, we don't have the beacon. How the fuck are we ever going to get out of here? And suddenly they just see the boat.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, conflict over. Good.
Yes.
We can go home.
Yes. A boat ex machina. I think this is as good a place as any to just call out with this scene and with everything that's coming up. This movie's budget was like, what, $70 million, $80 million?
$80 million, yep.
I would say every fucking penny of that is up here on screen. They make the most of the locations. They shot this on Kauai, a tropical paradise that Landon and I once went on vacation to together, a real 6 days, 7 nights type situation. And, like, this scene with them up on the mountaintop having this whole you need to be the confident captain thing, it is filmed in a wide shot with this beautiful, pristine bay and these verdant green peaks behind them. They are using the location. It looks phenomenal. Kauai is a beautiful place if you like humidity, unlike the hosts of this podcast.
I don't mind humidity too much.
I sure minded it on that trip. I was the whole time I was complaining to Landon and demanding that he pull snakes out of my pants and asking for my $700 back. I was a real Robin in the second act of this movie.
I didn't mind doing it when we were in the jungle, but when we were back in the hotel room and you were asking me to do it, that was a different story.
I mean, look, man, I wasn't sure what it was down there. It turned out it wasn't actually a snake. But so they go back down the mountain. They get on the rubber raft. A bunch of cross-fadey weirdness bridging the gaps of other scenes to get us
time progression.
One of the nights, I went back through this movie and tried to count how many nights pass to try and figure out if the movie delivers on its title.
I'm guessing 3?
5. 5 nights total.
5 nights on the island?
No, not 5 nights on the island. 5 nights total. You're right. It's probably 3 nights on the island.
On the island, yeah, okay.
But the movie doesn't even give... You can't make any kind of good faith argument for this movie giving you the number of nights that it promises.
Does it give you the number of days, though?
I think... I think it gives you 6 days, I think.
Okay, all right.
But so they get out on the little rubber raft. It seems like they're on the raft overnight as they're taking turns rowing out to where they've seen this boat. So they're on the raft, and they're talking some more about their lives and Harrison Ford's ex and everything. I just want to call out these conversation shots, these, like, you know, it's kind of like reverse shot of the two of them sitting in this dinghy. Did Ivan Reitman put an inflatable raft in a tank at a, like, Universal Studios backlot with a green screen behind it and composite in island images? No, motherfucker. He put some unlucky cameraman in a rubber raft with first Harrison Ford and later Anne Heche and had them floating around doing this scene, so you have this conversation playing out with these incredible ocean and island backdrops behind them. I mean, it's shooting anything on the water is so difficult, and they did it for this pretty bad movie that is completely lost on what it's trying to do. I want to respect the effort that went into shooting these scenes that don't work.
That's fair. I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like that's the kind of trade-off. Like, if you are deciding to shoot a tropical paradise movie, like, you don't get to do any backlot bullshit. Like, you have to do it all. Like, you're taking a vacation with your friends. You have to do it all there.
Yeah,
I think that's what we need to mandate here on forward. We'll call it the Adam Sandler ruling.
Yeah, yes, okay. That if you're going to do a vacation-based movie, there must be no green screen involved.
Exactly.
Although there are a couple of scenes of them running up hills or down hills later on, saying a bunch of kind of shoe leathery plot mechanics dialogue, where it looks an awful lot like they did not shoot this in Hawaii. It looks, based on the like coniferous trees that they're running past and the brown pine needles on the ground that do not match the lush green hills of Kauai, I'm thinking like, these were reshoots.
Was that shot in Victorville?
Yes, exactly. Was this within 30 miles of the major studio for tax purposes?
Was this in Harrison Ford's backyard?
Yes, and that crashed plane was actually already there. Anyway, they get close to this boat that they've seen. They hold up some binoculars. Oh shit, it's pirates on the boat. They're shooting a hostage, and then the pirates see them and start chasing after them. And now pirates are in this movie more than halfway through.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is like, deep, like, I don't know, we've got like 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes left of the movie, and the pirates enter. And, hey, you know what? Our buddy Cliff Curtis is back.
Yes.
He's returned from the reminiscence.
Yeah, I know. He's climbed out of the butt juice and into the water. Our buddy Cliff Curtis and also our buddy Danny Trejo, local LA business mogul and everybody's favorite local celebrity, Danny Trejo. I guess he's kind of an international celebrity.
And Tamura Morrison, who is also from Star Wars fame, playing Jango Fett in the prequels.
Yeah, it's a real star-studded cast of pirates.
Three pirates.
But boy, every one of them seems like stunt casting. It's it's these 3 pirates who show up to chase them back to the shore, shooting at them a little bit, chase them into the woods. The pirates, Harrison Ford and Anne Heche hide and ambush the pirates and do a pretty passable job of fighting them off with, just logs and driftwood and tripping them up and fisticuffs.
Here's the thing, though, where this movie kind of fails, because, as you said early on, when they get off the plane, they should have just conflicting ideas of how to go about things.
Yes.
They should have different skill sets,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
And we don't see that. We see Harrison Ford, by the sheer fact that he's a man's man, problem solving his way through this whole ordeal, while Anne Heche is just bungling up everything.
Yeah.
However, there is a glimmer of what that other movie could have been in this moment when the pirates catch up to them and hold them hostage. She's able to talk her way out of it. She's able to use her big city ways to get him out of the situation. I'm not saying the movie is super effective at it.
Yeah.
There's a glimmer there. She's the one that's like, we have gold. And then she, based on her knowledge of I work in fashion, we sell these jewels to fashion shoots. We're looking to expand our business. My husband takes care of that side of things. That's why we're out here. Her fast talking gets them out of the situation.
Yes, sure. Theoretically, that works. It would have been better.
I'm not saying it works. I'm saying it's a glimmer of what could have been.
If we had seen her in New York at her job, telling some kind of lie on the fly and convincing somebody to agree with something, if we had seen evidence before of her being good at deception and thinking on her feet like that, yes, this would feel earned.
It's just another emerging superpower of this conglomerate woman that is emerging before our eyes on this island from scene to scene, whatever the situation demands of her, to make comedy of the situation.
Yes, and it's also, that worked. That all totally made sense.
Okay, thank you.
The fact that this works also, I think, owes less to Anne Heche's lying ability and more the fact that these pirates were educated at the Orson Fortune Institute for Action Movie Bad Guys, because they like she says, we have gold on our boat. We have all kinds of gold and jewels and precious stones, and it's like, well, okay, these people are filthy, dirty clothes. You, the pirates, saw them floating in an emergency rubber raft. There is no reason for you to believe that these people have a boat full of jewels. There is no reason that this would be true. Why are you believing them?
More basically, why do the pirates care about these two?
Why? Yeah, well, the pirates witnessed them shooting that guy. This is a thing that your brain blocked out because it was too disturbing.
No, even still, they're pirates. They're gonna be gone in 2 seconds.
I guess okay.
I'm sure they don't have citizenship somewhere. Maybe they do, but they don't give a shit about it.
I guess
they're in international seas.
Yeah, I guess you're right. You're on a deserted island. What, are you scared these people are going to call the cops? It's a deserted island, but there's still police there.
They don't pose a threat to you. I mean, there's I don't know. To your point, they see them in tattered rag clothes, essentially. It's we gotta kill these people.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
You're right. I didn't think about it before, but now that you've told me, it doesn't make sense to me either. So the pirates holding them at gunpoint are like, okay, take us to your boat full of gold. We're sure that it exists. You have no reason to be deceptive right now. They get 2 steps into the jungle, and then Harrison Ford and Anne Heche go rolling down a hill to escape, and they're running, and the pirates are chasing, and they get to the edge of a cliff over some water, and Anne Heche is like, you gotta just leave me behind. I'm not gonna jump off this thing. I can't possibly do it. I'll take my chances with the pirates. Harrison Ford kisses her, throws her off the cliff, jumps after her.
He does say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's like, for what? And then... Yeah.
For kissing me?
Yeah.
And he goes, no, for this. And then, gives her a good shove.
Yeah.
One thing that... there's not much that gets a physical reaction out of me in movies, but there's something about jumping into water that just always makes my taint tingle.
Because it's not just as simple as just jump into the water. If you're jumping from that height into that much water, you have to if you don't clench your butt really hard, you're going to have internal injuries from the water going into some places. This is a fact. Look it up. You can Google that shit right now. Folks, if you're jumping into a large body of water from a great height, clench. You gotta clench.
Or go face first.
Yeah, sure, that too. But pray that there's no... I mean, either way, you're praying that there's no rocks. Folks, don't jump into a body of water.
And don't pull people into a body of water. We covered that on the last song.
Yes, exactly. Are there sharks in here? Who knows? But so they're in the water. The pirates, get up to the edge and look for them and can't see them. And okay, I guess they got into a submarine or something. And yeah, Harrison Ford and Anne Heche wash ashore on the beach and are lying in the surf, making out some more. Because you got time.
They have their from here to eternity moment.
Exactly. 6 days, eternity. And they then, after some more smooching, they run deeper into the forest and they eventually find a hiding place that is near a wrecked World War II float plane and decide to camp there for the night. And then basically Harrison Ford, looking at the plane, gets the idea to cut the floats off the plane, and the next 10 to 15 minutes is them shepherding these floats down a river back to Harrison Ford's plane on the beach. But, by the way, that night when they're sleeping under the plane, there's like, I really want to kiss you some more right now. Oh, well, we shouldn't, Anne Heche says, but then she falls asleep cuddling up against Harrison Ford anyway, and this long shot of his face trying to deal with the feelings he's having for her, and it's the greatest love story ever told. These two must be together.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have skipped over almost all of the quote-unquote romance parts. The actual backstory where he's opening up to her. I mean, you can't when that's what the movie's trying to do.
The movie is
doing
this
saying
like
it's effective,
20 minutes out from the end. The movie clearly didn't care that much about it either.
Well, it peppered it in throughout. Like you learn at one point that he had someone that left him, and then later, as he feels more comfortable, he opens up to her more and says, actually, it was his wife, or actually no. That the person that left him for his best friend and partner.
Yes.
And then later he opens up more and says, it was actually my wife of 12 years. And she goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Did you have kids? And he, starts talking about, no, I didn't have kids, but I wanted bunches of them. And like, I'm not saying it's good, but it is like what the movie is trying to develop the romance with. It's there. And we can't ignore it entirely.
It's what they're talking about in between all of these other weak sauce set pieces. It's like, yeah, them walking through the jungle, he's sawing the floats off the plane, and they are like kind of canoeing down a river on these floats, talking about, how many kids he wanted. And she's like, oh, you're still young, you could have kids. And there's this whole bit with like, she tries to guess how old he is.
They address the age issue.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, yes, I'm not just ahing at it, but the movie is pretty. I think the movie is half-assing this whole thing, because also it's like, if I learn like, okay, your romantic partner left you for your business partner, it's then not a huge revelation later to be like, actually, she was my wife. It's like, well, okay, like, I mean.
Yeah, but I would argue it's not about the revelation so much as the just kind of opening up and the deepening of their bond. Again, not that it actually works or is effective, but that's what they're going for. However, I will say that I appreciate this isn't like a phone-in performance from Harrison Ford.
No, not at all.
In these backstory moments, as kind of eye-rolly cliche as they are, like. He's still kind of like giving something to it.
Yeah, no.
Which I appreciate. And I know we're so fucking deep into this episode already, but I really want to take a second to look at Harrison Ford.
Oh, has anyone done that before?
Well, we're going to do something a little different. We know him from, his Deckards. We know him from his solos. We know him from his Indianas. But I want to highlight the more overshadowed films and performances of him, the things that came between those. Because for every franchise he did, I feel like he also did some really interesting performances. And this is an interesting performance or a fun performance in a forgettable movie. But like, okay, between Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, he does a drama like Witness, or a thriller like Frantic, or a comedy like Working Girl. Between The Fugitive and Air Force One, he does the romantic drama Regarding Henry, the Sabrina remake with Mr. Greg Kinnear.
Yeah, with Greg Kinnear. I think that's a lot of people in that Sabrina remake signing up for the thankless task of remaking a movie with a lot of iconic old Hollywood stars in it who can never truly be replaced, but boy, they tried.
Yeah. And then he does the dramatic thriller The Devil's Own with Brad Pitt. So, like, we remember him for the, like, iconic roles, but he like, was doing other stuff as well. I know, he's one of those rare Hollywood box office stars of the time that just, like, I think you call, like, Will Smith was probably the last one that just, like, was guaranteed $100 million in the box office.
Yeah. And, I mean, I feel like Harrison Ford, as much as he is in these, blockbuster franchises, I think he really fancies himself as someone who takes the craft of acting very seriously and who wants to take a variety of roles and is not really obsessed with image management or, things like that. Like, even though he'll do, a lot of action adventure stuff and he kind of knows what his wheelhouse is, he is not afraid to take things where he is playing against type or where he is kind of challenging his tough guy character. I mean, I'm thinking about, I don't know, he's on the TV show Shrinking, which I think he's really great in that, and he is playing a guy who is very gruff and set in his ways and kind of like checking all the boxes that you would associate with Harrison Ford, but then he's also going into a lot of deeper vulnerability and, emotional issues and kind of probing, like, why is this character he's playing so gruff and closing people off? Like, Harrison Ford is not intent on building up this kind of myth of himself or being this impenetrable, larger-than-life figure who just plays the cool guy in every movie.
He recognizes that pop culture is doing that for him.
Yes, he recognizes that pop culture is doing that for him, and he, to some degree, almost wants to get away from that and, be recognized for being... Like, I'm not just Indiana Jones, like, I am an actor who makes multiple films and can do multiple things. Like, he appreciates the craft of acting and I think enjoys the work.
Yeah. And listen, I'm not going to go deep on Ivan Reitman either, but worth mentioning that, his legacy is obviously Ghostbusters, but he helmed a number of other classics, cult or otherwise.
Yeah, like Ghostbusters 2.
He did Meatballs, he did Stripes, Twins, Kindergarten Cop, and just like a whole lot of forgotten films. But I think he's like worth mentioning. He's more prolific as a producer, and helped give life to such directors as like David Cronenberg. So that's something that I think Ivan Reitman is also a kind of misunderstood figure in the kind of blockbuster Hollywood pantheon.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of that misunderstanding comes from the fact that he sort of slowly faded away. I mean, as the 90s wore on. I mean,
as a director.
As a director. I mean, it's just like once. I don't know. I think that it's easier as the general public or as the movie-going public to recognize the legacy and input of a director versus a producer, because it's hard to...
Yeah, fair.
No one truly knows what a producer does. It's one of the great mysteries of Hollywood. What is producing? Like, what is a manager versus an agent?
Fair.
Anyway, they get this pontoon float down the river. They get back to the beach with it. There is a lengthy A-team montage of them Gilligan's Islanding together, all kinds of scaffolding and winches and pulleys out of vines.
Very, very confused where they get half of the materials that they're using. Like, they're using like belt winches that are clearly not from the jungle.
No.
They come from the plain somewhere.
Those are not naturally occurring.
He has both a machete and an axe.
Yes.
And then, lots of bamboo and twine that they're either making out of rope they had, or they're making it new out of, I don't know, bamboo string, like string cheese.
Yes. They've dug like a big pit in the sand so they can like get the pontoon float underneath the wrecked landing gear of the plane. Like, the thing is that at the beginning when the plane is wrecked, Harrison Ford has said, well, I can't fix it. What do you want me to do? Just glue it back on? And then he winds up doing this.
Yeah.
Also, when we don't really know that this is their plan. Like, we see him in the morning after they've gone to sleep. He says, I have a plan, and he saws the pontoons off of the wrecked plane, and then we see them moving the pontoons through the jungle or whatever, and then we just go right into this montage of them attaching them. This resolution, this is how they get off the island, it doesn't really pay off anything about Harrison Ford's character, or, it doesn't, what has happened for him to realize that this is the plan? Or, what confidence has he gained?
It's less about that than it is the movie saying Robin needs a captain.
Yes.
And he hasn't been a captain, but now he's a captain because he has a plan, and therefore their love can come to fruition because he could be the man she needs.
And he's able to have a plan because he knows that he wants Anne Heche now. It's like she falls asleep holding him, and he's lying there at night looking up at the plane, and I guess that is what inspires... She's his muse, and inspires him to figure out a way to MacGyver one plane together out of two planes.
Yes. Love is the motivating force through this whole film. If you have any question about why, the answer's love.
Every movie eventually gets back to being the fifth element. It was love all along.
Why are there pirates? Love.
Yes. No. The reason that there's pirates, Landon, is because the movie has run out of gas and they need a thing to do. They are load-bearing pirates. And these load-bearing pirates very politely forget to chase them for the seemingly several hours they spend MacGyvering the plane back together. And then as soon as they are ready to leave and they're firing up the engine, the pirate boat comes around the edge of the cove on the beach and is steaming towards them, and they're shooting a big howitzer at them, and things are exploding, and Harrison Ford is lightly injured and bleeding, and they get in the plane and they take off flying over the pirate ship, and the pirate ship points its gun up and it fires one final howitzer shot at them. And as they're doing it, I'm like, no, pirates, I know what's going to happen to you. This is not going to end well. My buddy Jacob told me how this was going to end. And the shell falls back down and their ship blows up. And that is a picture wrap on the pirates, their second appearance in the entire film.
And okay, we didn't talk at all about the David Schwimmer, Angelica scenes at all. This kind of subplot. As I said, there's Act 2 and then there's the sub act.
Yeah. Well, let's do it now.
They are. At first, he's kind of sad that she went away on their trip.
Yes.
Then the next day, he gets while eating breakfast, he gets note that Allison Janney has called, that Anne Heche hasn't shown up in Tahiti for the photo shoot. He gets a little worried, goes to the consulate, and says, what the fuck's going on? They decide to put together a search party.
I mean, it really just seems like he goes to the concierge at the hotel.
It seems like... I got my con words mixed up.
It's sort of a Con Air situation, really, because they find a helicopter for them.
And Danny Trejo's in it.
Yeah, so true.
They get a SOS helicopter out there, and just like a real great 90s exchange between two supporting players in this. One of the guys is kind of enthusiastic, trying to keep their spirits up, and says, well, it's been less than 12 hours since they're gone, so the chances are good that we'll find them. And then the pilot, who hasn't said anything, just gives him this look like, why are you lying to them?
Well, and they get on the helicopter. The entire search and rescue operation, by the way, consists of this one helicopter flying around for exactly one day. And for some I got a question about it. Okay, but But also, though, the search and rescue operation decides to bring the next of kin of the two missing people along why? Why do you need them in the helicopter? Is it like they need to identify them from the sky?
Maybe. What if one of their suitcases popped up and you're like, that's her pink scarf?
Yeah, there's no way that the trained search and rescue helicopter operator could see a suitcase floating in the middle of the ocean and think, perhaps we should investigate further.
The other thing is, they take this SOS helicopter, like late morning of one day. Then we cut, because we're constantly cutting back between David Schwimmer's storyline and Heche's storyline. And so as we cut back and we do a bunch of island stuff, right? They end up going, I think it's when the pirates start chasing them and they escape the pirates and fall asleep next to the World War II plane. We cut back to David Schwimmer the next day, and they're still in the helicopter.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's been...
I'm like, is this a second flight, or is this... did they go all night?
Yeah, I know. How long have they been doing this? Because it both seems like they've been searching for a very long time, and then one of the scenes back at the resort later in the movie is, like, the concierge from the hotel going to David Schwimmer and Angelica, knocking on the door and saying, "I'm sorry, they've decided to call off the search." And it's been like, it's been a day and a half. You really didn't even try.
Yeah.
You had one helicopter, and that was it.
So then that begins the grief portion where they start drinking a little bit, and at nighttime, Angelica invites David Schwimmer back to her bungalow, and it's like, well, neither of us are in a good place, and she starts undressing.
Yeah.
And he's like, gaga gooey. And
that's
she's like, why didn't you stay here?
That's the Turkish knockoff of Baba Booey, is Gagagooey.
She takes off her top, then she takes off her bra, and she's like, well, you might think I'm a little slutty, but why don't you stay here? We're both consenting adults, and, we're going through something, and we're both just people. And he's like, no, I couldn't.
No. Well, maybe I could, but I couldn't.
No, I gotta go. And then he leaves. But then we cut to the next day when, they say they're going to end the search and rescue.
Yes.
And we see that, oh, yeah, no, he actually went back and they slept together.
Yeah, yes, so much here, but the main thing is that it took him very little time he doesn't even know his girlfriend is dead. He has not seen her for about 24 hours, and that's all the time it takes for him to betray her.
I mean, doesn't know she's dead, knows that she's missing. Yeah, it is a weird time to... Well, I don't know. I mean, I've never been in that situation. I would like to think I wouldn't, but
I would... If it were me, I would wait until I had ironclad proof that my partner was dead before I started sleeping with other people. That's just me. Call me old-fashioned.
I'm not that kind of person, and I'm not excusing the behavior, but, like, maybe there is a... Like, what? This sort of moment always makes me think back to the movie High Fidelity, which that movie certainly has its own problems, but... When he accompanies her to the funeral and she wants to have sex with him, she's like, I just want to feel something different than I do right now. Like that, I don't know why, gave me an insight into, certain people's physical needs that I don't share, but that I'm like, oh, interesting. In a time of grief, in a time of stress, there might be certain people who like need a different kind of release, and if your partner isn't there. I mean, yes, you should have the wherewithal to withstand that, but, maybe there are types of people that are, like, become more insatiable in those moments.
I mean, look, I can't fault anybody for wanting to feel good when they've been feeling real bad. I think I just take issue with some of the methods here.
Yes, yeah, of course. I agree. I'm not forgiving the behavior at all.
And
just trying to understand it.
And... I mean, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I can't condone David Schwimmer cheating on his fiancée here, but whatever.
You don't condone the bone zone.
I don't condone the bone zone at all. I do condone the calzone. If he had just drowned his sorrows in Italian food, we would have a completely different situation. Probably wouldn't get a great calzone on a tropical island, nor do you want to eat really heavy, doughy, hot food. So look,
it would certainly have a pineapple in it too.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want it Hawaiian style. Thank you very much. So, if you were a shitty movie boyfriend and you have cheated on your girlfriend, you've made that choice. Okay, fine. Here's my message to you, shitty movie boyfriends. If you do it, you've got to own it. Okay? If you either need to spend the rest of the movie either being psyched about the fact that you have found a new paramour. Or you need to spend the rest of the movie trying to concoct a lie that you can tell your girlfriend so you don't get caught. Those are two interesting, forward-looking character traits for you to have to motivate the rest of your actions. Do not spend the rest of the movie being sad and whining about a thing you did in a previous scene, because that just takes all of the gas out of what we're doing here. Because, like, Schwimmer spends every subsequent scene just going like, oh my god, I can't believe we did that. Oh, it was so wrong. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Like, 3 different scenes of that. He's already a whiny and annoying character. Oh, boy. You gotta do something.
He definitely is, like, bathing in the self-loathing here. And it's not a pretty picture, nor, like, welcome, like, respite from what's happening in the rest of the film. Whenever we cut back to it, I'm just like, oh, God, do we have to watch this guy again?
It's like, we'll be watching them doing some pretty mediocre adventure stuff or mediocre romance stuff on the island, and I'm like, oh, God, is there anything else you can be looking at? And then we cut to David Schwimmer whining for the 3rd scene in a row about how he can't believe that he cheated on his girlfriend, and it's like, oh, man, okay, to go back to the island. Are the pirates back? I was promised pirates, like, 28 years ago. Do we have more to say about the Schwimmer situation?
No, because it starts to, both of them, begin to come together here once they get back on the island, which you brought us through to. Like, they're reunited, and
we'd have to just address, though, they're flying back to the island. Harrison Ford passes out from blood loss, so it's on Anne Heche to land the plane. And they are arriving at the island as they're having a funeral for Harrison Ford and Anne Heche's characters, which is just insane that it's just like the entire rescue operation and memorial for these 2 people is conducted entirely by this one random resort. There's like a guy, like the band from the hotel is out there playing. There's a guy blowing a conch shell. But the plane comes in for a landing and tries to land on the pontoons. Anne Heche comes in a little hot. The plane completely crashes into the water. And ladies and gentlemen, Ivan Reitman did this all with practical effects. It looks amazing. Apparently, they had a Huey helicopter with a line running off of it, towing this plane, and just basically with the engine running on the plane, dragging this plane through the water so it's flipping around and doing all this. It looks so dope. It is so... If everything...
Something that would be done entirely with CGI today, and,
yes.
There is a place for that for safety, and I appreciate that both exist, but there is something, like, tactile about this that you just... It like I said in the Tarzan episode, like, when it's CGI, I don't feel like anything's on the line, and my brain doesn't register it as important. This one, I'm like, I felt the peril. I'm like, oh my God, someone on that beach is going to get hit by a propeller.
I know. It felt like, watching this, it's like, should I have enjoyed the rest of the movie more? Like, this clearly means something. Like, they really put... I should be appreciating this. This is the climax of the film. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, and it was secretly good.
Yeah, and then we've kind of covered everything at the end here. Like, the only thing, like, she goes to see him in the hospital, and they have that moment of, was this a thing? Wasn't this a thing? It was, but why complicate it? I'm not going to go... You're not going to come here and be my co-pilot. I'm not going to go to New York and be your receptionist. So, why don't we just leave it simple? And she's like, oh, yeah, I forgot you like it simple.
Yeah.
And then they part ways. And then we get the final moment, which we haven't talked about yet, which is her and David Schwimmer are about to go back on the plane to go to New York. He confesses, accidentally, that he slept with Angelica. And she's like, oh, what? I don't think we should get married.
But for more reasons than just that. She doesn't even seem that mad that he cheated on her, and it's just like... Okay, I mean, again, it speaks to the fact that there was a much more complex story about what was wrong in their relationship that just does not get told.
Yeah, exactly. But they give... So I was kind of wondering what your experience was with this, because I feel like I really admire that you can get lost in what's transpiring in a scene.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I don't want to... I'm going to just use the words you used to describe yourself before, but
okay.
A movie can fool you.
Yes.
At times.
Yes.
And so in this moment when she's like, I don't want to get married, and, she's leaving Harrison Ford behind in the hospital, and she's like, there's that moment of, should I get on the plane? Should I not get on the plane? And then she gets on the plane. What's going through your head in that moment?
So I'm seeing her getting on the plane, and then I'm seeing Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford, like jumps off a helicopter on the airport tarmac and is running across the tarmac trying to flag down the plane.
Not before she gets on the plane, though.
Not before she gets on the plane. I see her, but...
And that's where I'm like, does Truman think that this is going to end with them going off in separate directions?
Listen, Truman thought, okay, then great. Then the last scene in the movie is going to be her back at her office in New York, and then Harrison Ford shows up there, and it's like, it's going to be, you know, your classic... Romancing the Stone ending where she goes back to New York and Michael Douglas is waiting on a boat on a trailer out in Midtown traffic. Or your Crocodile Dundee ending, which I had for many years conflated with Romancing the Stone, where it's Paul Hogan on a boat in Midtown traffic. I was expecting Harrison Ford to basically be on a plane on a trailer in Midtown New York traffic. But we don't get that. Instead,
we don't get that.
He goes running down the tarmac, but the plane is already taking off, and he's all sad. But then it turns out Anne Heche got off the plane at the last second and is having a big argument with a couple of Tahitian cops. And Harrison Ford speaks some French to him and gets him to leave her alone, and basically tells her, hey, I changed my mind. I want to make my life real complicated. And kisses ensue.
And then Avril Lavigne made a career on that.
Oh, yes, but it's not Avril Lavigne who takes us out of this movie. No, sir.
No, it's not.
No, sir. It's Bob Marley. Okay. Is this love? Is this love? Is this love that they're feeling as the credits roll?
Is this... Okay, hold on a second. This is the second movie in a row that we go out on a Bob Marley song. What are the chances of that?
Landon, that is the spirit of Jah, kind of... affecting our podcast. We've floated into a very mellow part of the universe that is all about love.
I don't have anything more to say about this. I think we should just start to wrap up because this has been kind of a longer episode. Why was this movie forgotten?
I think that this movie was forgotten because it just can't live up to the hype of its premise. Or it doesn't.
And its premise is Harrison Ford.
It could have lived up to the hype of its premise, which is Harrison Ford on an island adventure.
Yeah.
It does not live up to the hype of its premise. I think that on some level they just sort of expected the movie to work just based off of charismatic actors and a beautiful location, but there's not. But the script doesn't give you enough. It doesn't give them enough to actually make this work. There's just such a lack of agency or such a lack of stakes or motivation in so many of these scenes that it winds up being kind of boring for most of the movie and is overshadowed by a lot of other better movies. So I think it didn't make an impression, even though a lot of people saw it over the course of 6 weeks or so in the late 90s. Why do you think it was forgotten?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm going to point to a few things I've said in the past about superstar syndrome. This just isn't going to be in the zeitgeist when talking about Harrison Ford.
No.
Even if you aren't talking about his superhero movies, you're gonna... Yes, I included Indiana Jones and Han Solo as superhero movies.
Well, they basically Marvel owns all of them now, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, you're not going to be talking about 6 Days, 7 Nights. You're going to be talking about Witness. You're going to be talking about The Fugitive. You're going to be talking about his time as Jack Ryan. 6 Days, 7 Nights is just so far down the Harrison Ford conversation pole that you're just never going to get there.
Yes.
And the script is weird. This should have, to what you said, there are other movies where it works when you just balance on the chemistry of your actors.
Yes.
And I feel like Harrison Ford and Anne Heche have the chemistry to make that work, which is just more indication that there's something missing here. And I kind of wish it was either less plot contrivances or a whole lot more.
Yes.
Why are there pirates here? Get the fucking pirates out. Let's just vibe out Castaway style with Anne Heche and Harrison Ford.
Look, Castaway is a much more exciting and engaging movie, and it is literally Tom Hanks and a volleyball. But because that movie had a gradual escalation of stakes, you had there was like an arc that character goes through. I guess Wilson is sort of underwritten. He doesn't really have an arc in that. Well, no, actually, at the end, he floats away.
Yeah, and surprisingly, they did not get along on set at
all.
all.
Oh, really? I thought I read that there was actually an on-set romance between them, but maybe that was too, reading the page 6 gossip columns. Yeah, true. But yeah, I think it's just a passable version of this script. Not even great, but just a passable version where where the stakes get higher and there is a propulsive energy to the script. It wouldn't have to be great, but even just having the just basic mechanics of that, I think, would make for a more memorable movie where the charisma could carry us the rest of the way.
I'm actually, you just pinpointed my answer to why it's forgotten.
Okay.
I think this is the passable version. This isn't the great version. This isn't the bad version. This is just like, I had an enjoyable 47 minutes. It was a passable entertainment.
An enjoyable 47 minutes out of the 102
The other
minute.
hour, I hated myself. No,
I mean,
hour
yeah.
and 47 minutes.
Yeah, no, I had an enjoyable probably 26 to 27 minutes. I
think this is just a passable movie. Like I don't think it's a terrible movie. We've covered worse movies here.
We have. I'm a little more mad about this one than I think The Recruit is a passable movie. I think this movie
agreed.
is bad because I was never bored watching The Recruit. I was never bored watching, I don't know, say The Last Song, but this movie I was bored for a big chunk of the middle of a movie about two people crashed on a desert island together, and it's that shouldn't happen.
Okay, fair.
You flew all these people to Kauai. You need to at least make it interesting.
Well, okay, I guess it's not too surprising what your verdict is going to be. Should we send this back to modern memory or leave it forgotten? Truman, what say you?
Let's leave it forgotten, floating out here in the ocean of space.
I don't think I struggled with it quite as much as you did, but I agree. Let's leave it on the island out here amongst the stars. There's really there's better. We've already listed a number of better examples of this movie, and there's better performances. I'd say the only thing kind of worth a look here is what could have been of a leading lady of Anne Heche.
Yeah, I think that and several seconds of David Schwimmer dancing and getting hornier and hornier while eating pineapple.
And Harrison Ford drunk.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got basically 2 scenes in 1 performance. Look, folks, watch the first 27 minutes of this movie. Currently, it's free on Hulu as of this recording. Watch the first 27 minutes, pause the movie as soon as the plane is landed on the island, and then, hey, write some fanfic. Finish the story yourself.
It crashes on the island, but okay.
Landing, crashing. It's whatever. That's for the lawyers to decide. I'm just saying. Treat it as a writing prompt and finish the story yourself, and you'll probably have a better thing than this.
I like that idea.
Thank you. Let's both do that right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that wraps up our discussion for this week of 6 Days, 7 Nights.
Thank you very much.
Until next week when we do our mini episode on 6 Days, 7 Nights. We'll see you then. I have been, for Truman Caps, Landen Solano.
And I have been, for Landen, Solano, Truman, Caps. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Whoa!
Movie Memory Machine is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/gruntworkpodcast to keep the machine running. Theme song by Porky's Groove Machine. Rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. For more information on today's show, visit MovieMemoryMachine.com.